fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's going in the outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up to
Oh my god!
Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly.
Oh, there we go!
Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?
Yeah, so we're using the VRS Direct Force Pro this year. We have a wheel adapter right here, so I'm using the rim I used last year. But the motor right here produces a lot of power, a lot of precision, and it helps me, just feel the car more, feel the car a lot quicker. Especially, this week we're at Sonoma. I can feel it, when it hits the curbs. Any little change in the car, the wheel reacts a lot quicker than your typical gear-driven or belt-driven wheel. For example, if you're on oval and the rear tires break loose, force feedback on it corrects a lot quicker than your typical wheels. There's no resistance pretty much as far as being able to make quick corrections on the wheel. So all that, paired with how precise the wheel itself is, it makes it to where it helps you as a driver, to find that extra hundredth or thousandths of a second. So when you're getting a direct drive wheel, especially the VRS wheel, it's heavy duty. It's got good weight to it, it's not a plastic toy. It feels like you can really beat up on it. A lot of people have issues with their plastic gear-driven wheels just kind of breaking after a couple years. This thing just feels like it can go forever. The forces are really strong where if you might have to let go of the wheel if you get into the wall. You can adjust all that with the settings on it and stuff, but the wheel itself doesn't play around. It's got way more strength than you could ever need, and that's what makes it good, that you can adjust that down to whatever the car needs. So initially you'll be able to get the controller box and the motor together, and eventually you will be able to add a rim onto that option. They'll also be including a button plate on it to put on the rim to have all sorts of different buttons and functionality. Also, pedals are coming, so that's a pretty big deal as well. Hasn't been covered too much, but the goal is to also have pedals to go along with the Direct Force Pro. So that's pretty exciting. The wheel feels good. It feels very much like a real world steering wheel. You just kind of feel like what you would imagine the car to feel like. A real steering wheel in a car is very smooth, it's very direct, very quick, and that's what this wheel feels like.
Greetings everyone, welcome to SimSpeed TV for the International Division of the Majors Series. Once again, it is the LeMans 2.4 and we're going slightly retro for this round with a little bit of a change up in the car lineup from what you'd usually see in a LeMans 24 hour. Here we have the HPD LMP2 prototype, we have the Corvette and Aston Martin GT1 cars, and we have the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car, all racing together for 144 minutes around the brilliant Le Mans circuit, a very historic venue that's seen lots of triumph, lots of tragedy, lots of excitement over the years, but here's hoping we get a fantastic race in the Majors International Division. My name's Reese Gardner, joining me in the commentary box as per usual, Ryan Jones. Now Ryan, this is going to be quite the race. With multi-class sports car racing, I always enjoy it, especially around a track like this. We know what to expect.
Yeah, we do. It's going to be quite the endurance race, of course, not quite to the same level that we're all used to seeing when we come to Le Mans, and it's a 24-hour event that's held each and every year. But 2.4 hours is still going to be very taxing for these drivers, all situated around the country, at home, and some of them even outside of Australia and New Zealand as well. Blake, Harold Stadler, of course, Dean Moll, Pierre Cousin, all from outside the AusNZ region, and Thomas O'Leary, Jack Stiles as well, and Scott Corbin. Still, we've actually got quite a few non-AusNZ drivers in here, but they'll all be situated in their cockpits at home, and they'll be feeling the effects of this one after 2.4 hours, because it's a grueling racetrack. Luckily, they've got plenty of time to rest, but Reese, that can be a bit of a pitfall, because you can very easily lose focus maybe start to daydream a little bit and very quickly miss that braking marker. And with the high speeds you reach at the end of the Mulsanne straight, it's game over if you miss that marker.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of long straights here at Le Mans, a bit of a holdover from the old days, this racetrack. It's largely a public road circuit with a permanent section that you can see right here, one of the DPR LMP2s coming through to start their qualifying lap. Across the line they come. That is Damon Stockton we're taking a look at as he makes his way into turn 1 for the first of 4 qualifying laps that everyone is allowed over the next 20 minutes of time. And the Dunlop chicane, very iconic opening section of this circuit coming down through the S's. I love this section, especially these S's here that have been in place since the early 1930s. And then through the Tetra Rouge corner you come, which has been reprofiled quite a bit over the years, and then out onto the Mulsanne Straight, a section of French National Highway that's been a feature of the circuit for its entire existence. Though, Ryan, now it is punctuated by a couple of still fast chicanes.
Sorry, I was just looking at Dean Moll. He came out of pit lane and actually put it straight in the fence.
Oh dear.
But when he reset, it put him at the back of the circuit. So what I think he did there was a very clever way to ensure he got all 4 laps in. But he then stopped again before the final chicane, so not quite sure what he's doing there. Because a point I wanted to raise was with only 20 minutes available, I'm not sure the Porsches are going to be able to get all 4 laps in, with the fact that they need to complete their outlap as well, which adds, another 4 minutes onto their lap time, onto their total time for the session. So effectively 5 laps. They're not going to reach the end of lap 4 because they're putting in 4-minute lap times. Whereas the HPDs, they'll make it easily, and so should the GT1 cars, at least the front runners in that category. But what Dean Moll's just done, very clever, I think.
Well, it's actually an automatic feature of this circuit in solo qualifying. It places you before the final 2 chicanes because iRacing recognizes that that an outlap here takes an awfully long time. So everyone gets automatically placed at the end of the lap in order to start off their qualifying laps with time left. So it's not quite as clever as you might have thought, but still, it's a bit of a clever feature of the sim, I suppose.
So this tells you 2 things. 1, I haven't done much racing at Le Mans myself that has required a qualifying in the session. And 2, Dean Moll has overcommitted twice and trying to start off.
He's just done it again.
And he make that 3 times, and he's clipped the fence again. Dean Moll's really struggling, and he's going to have to give up, I think, on resetting, because he's going to lose his 4th lap for real if he keeps resetting and using up all this time.
Yeah, exactly. Well, Damon Stockton's having no such issues. He's coming up to a very iconic section of the circuit, and my favourite part of the circuit, the Porsche curves. It's very fast in this HPD ARX01C, a car that has been out of racing competition now for a while, but it is still available to drive on the iRacing sim. It's a bit of a marker of a bygone era in prototype racing. Nowadays, when you watch a real-life sports car endurance race, you see all the prototypes have roofs and all of that. Well, the HPD, the old-school style of sports prototype, no roof, but you still have to sit over at one side of the car, this being a sports car. This first lap is going to come in, and it's going to be a 3-minute 36.293. So these drivers will be completing a lap of Le Mans in about 3.5 minutes up at the very top. Phil Otto puts in the second of the times. Daniel Stevens demonstrating a lap time in the GT1s, about the 3-minute 50-second mark. So there he is with provisional pole for the GT1 class, and Cameron Dance there for TechSense Fitstyle Motorsport, championship leader by 15 points over Thomas Hens, putting it on provisional pole there in the Porsche class. Harold Stadler, his teammate at Fitstyle Motorsports, has put in a time 2 seconds slower than that. And at a track as long as Le Mans, that's not quite as big of an issue as you would think, because this track is so long. It's 13.63 kilometers in length. If you're only separated by like a tenth at the end, you'd say, oh, that's a pretty close gap at most tracks. But at Le Mans, it's knife edge.
Absolutely, there's absolutely nothing in that margin. 13.63 kilometers spread across 38 turns, and the three gigantic stretches of the Mulsanne Straight, which of course are broken up by the chicanes in modern times to alleviate some of the car's ultimate top-end speed and make things a little bit safer, as we see Mitchell Bales come across the line. 336.656, puts himself third, and the gap now from first to second is 0.02 of a second across a nearly 14-kilometer racetrack. Could you believe that?
That is fantastic to see that kind of gap. I mean, I was saying that a tenth was knife edge, but 0.02 over 3 minutes and 36 seconds. That is absolutely crazy, and I think it tells us one thing. It's going to be a very closely fought battle for the overall win in the HPD class. Meanwhile, it looks like Blake Neck has managed to put it on pole in GT1, taking 1.6 seconds out of the time set by Glenn Burns. Thomas Hinz second in the championship, 3 minutes 35 for that particular time. So that gap that was formerly for first and second is now been absolutely trounced there by Hinsey. That is 0.8 taken out of that one.
Good effort from Hinz. See if it stands the test of still 13 more minutes in this session, though. Only a handful of Porsche times have been set. Cameron Dance leading those 4 efforts. Still about half of the Porsche grid yet to set their times. Dance leads that grid by 1.5 seconds. He's really got the measure of them at the moment in this qualifying session. He's currently just sat at the sim entry point, we'll call it, to the qualifying session, waiting to go out again if he needs to, as we see Stockton come to the end of another lap. This is his second attempt. Where does it put him on the leaderboard? 35-1. That should put him right to the top.
That certainly should, and that's by 0.3 over Thomas Hinz. So Damon Stockton certainly got the setup for this HPD sorted. What about Scott Corbin, meanwhile? He's coming up to the end of his first timed lap. He wasn't able to get a lap in on lap 1. Obviously encountering the old off-track 1X at some point on that lap, or messing it up. Doesn't take quite as much of the exit curb as other drivers have, but a 35.354, that will bump Thomas Hinz down to third place. So again, the times coming in here for the HPD class and showing that it's going to be a very tightly contested class there up at the front of this field. And man, I love the nostalgic vibes. Just seeing these open top LMP1s coming down the Mulsanne Straight brings me right back to 2007, 2008, when I was trying to find streams for the real life 24-hour race that takes place here. Sean O'Hara in the number 24. He hasn't set a time yet, but he shall now. No, actually, he won't. He's compromised himself on that one somewhere. No time for him.
Suspect he had a spin, because that was a spectacularly unattractive lap time for him. About 20 seconds off of what Cameron Dance did. So he would have most likely spun out somewhere or had a significant off, which invalidated that lap, as well as significantly slowing it, as Adrian Steffen goes 5th in class with his latest effort. There's now half a second covering 6 cars in HPDs. And what we haven't talked about as we get ready for the actual race is right now in qualifying, they're doing all these times solo and by themselves. When we get into the race and we head down this Mulsanne Straight, and there's plenty of open stretches around the rest of the track as well, slipstream is going to be a huge factor, and with the high speeds of the HPDs, is going to be absolutely monumental. Going to be very hard for any of those guys with how close they are on pace to break away at the front. We could see some great pack racing.
Yeah, we absolutely could. In the slipstream, the HPD can reach speeds approaching 320 kilometers per hour, which is absolutely motoring down the Mulsanne Straight. Not going to see times quite as fast in these GT1 cars. Jack Styles we ride on board with through the Porsche curves. Obviously, these cars here, very retro now. They last raced in the early 2010s, these GT1 machines. The Aston Martin with its beautiful singing V12 engine. And they'll probably reach about 310 down the Mulsanne Straight in the slipstream. Have a look at how much curb Mr. Styles is taking. To the end of that lap he goes, and it's going to be a 3-minute 47.902 for him. So that puts him second in class for the time being, and 13th overall.
What about Blake Neck, though? He's got 1.6 seconds in hand over Jack Styles. 1 and 2 in GT1. That is a massive, massive margin. I mentioned Cameron Dance had a similar sort of gap in Porsche. Well, he doesn't anymore, so that is major stuff. And Neck could be unchallenged in the race as long as he keeps it mistake-free and no one gets close to him at the end of the session. He's on his final lap now, though, Blake Neck. So he's using his stuff up early on in this qualifying session. Still 9 or so minutes remaining. Jack Styles is only on his 3rd lap, so he's still got a bit of time to find. The advantage between Dance and Stadler, by the way, is 0.3 of a second as we're watching Scott Corbin come across the line. Didn't register a lap there, might have just picked up a little off track somewhere along the way. It's not the easiest track to keep all 4 tyres within the white lines because of just how many corners there are, 38 of them. As we jump on board now with Blake Neck picking up the Corvette GT1 machine that outpaces the rest by over 1.5 seconds.
Yeah, Blake Neck driving the Corvette. He is a lover of the big American V8 boy, and making his way into those Porsche curves. The GT1s definitely seem sedate in terms of speed, but certainly not in wheel work as they make their way through this section. They don't produce anywhere near as much downforce as the HPD does. In the meantime, I did notice that Damon Stockton has retaken HPD pole position from Thomas Hinz, but it's still very close between those guys. 0.04 of a second as Mitchell Bales goes P3 in that class. Blake Neck, though, coming up to the end of his lap and tipping the Corvette into the Ford chicane, monstering those curbs. Let's see if the number 42 can improve on that 3-minute 46.3. And it's going to be a 3-minute 45.6. That is indeed an improvement. All hail Blake Neck up at the top.
2.3 seconds, the gap from Neck to Styles. 1 and 2 in GT1. Styles needs to find something big in response over his next lap and a half that he's still got up his sleeve in qualifying. Here's Thomas Hinz. He's got this last corner and then one more lap to try and find pole for the outright starting order. 34-0. That puts him to the top for now by half a second over Damon Stockton.
That's a fantastic lap there from Thomas Hinz. The tyres are switched on in at number 52 now. And Jack Styles here.
Stockton's done, by the way.
Yeah, he is, and so is Scott Corbin. He pulled over at the start of his 4th lap, so we're not going to be seeing any more laps out of those guys. So we'll see if Thomas Hinz and Damon Stockton, well, obviously Stockton done, so Hinzy has secured pole for the time being. Doesn't look like there's going to be much of a challenge, apart maybe from Robert Northway.
Mitchell Bales, maybe. Could get close to knocking Stockton off, but I don't think he can find 1.2 seconds. Anyway, he might surprise us. Here's Jack Styles. Penultimate effort for him in the Aston Martin. 47.2. He goes quicker than he's gone previously, but he is still 1.6 seconds adrift of Blake Neck. he himself has 3/4 of a second now over Dwayne Burns back there in third. It's pretty close between Burns, Sheridan, Stevens, and Bowen, though. Third, fourth, fifth, and sixth in the GT1 class, so a good fight shaping up there ahead of the race. Still Dance from Stadler in the Porsche fight. These are GT3 cars, so they're certainly not slouches, but they just seem really slow when put up against HPDs and GT1s.
Yes, indeed. And to be specific, this is the Porsche 911 GT3 Cup car that we're driving here. So it's not the same car as the 911 GT3R that was released this build. It's more what you'd see in Carrera Cup competitions and the Porsche Super Cup around the globe. So it's got much less grippy tyres, much less downforce, basically no adjustments on the car, and a lot of drivers say it's an absolute pig to drive, and I'd say that I agree with them, but it certainly makes for some great racing in that machine, as that is an HPD of the Gentlemen's Sim Racing Club making its way in to the pits. Adrian Steffen, meanwhile, he's currently 6th in HPD. His current fastest time, 3 minute 35.6. And have a look at the direction change on the way out of the Porsche curves. He's got the downforce working on that thing. Most of the downforce is produced by the floor in the HPD. It has diffusers on the front and rear to absolutely glue it to the circuit through those high-speed corners. So is this going to be an improvement for Adrian Steffen? Out of the final corner he comes. That's going to be a 3 minute 34.4. So that is a fantastic time that puts him up to 2nd in the HPD right at the end. Adrian Steffen absolutely switching it on. Harold Stadler, meanwhile, it is a Fitzstein Motorsport 1-2 in the Porsche Cup class. 402.603 for him on his final run. That is brilliant stuff from Harold Stadler. Couldn't quite pip his teammate Cam Dance, though.
No, he couldn't. And Mitchell Bales improved as well on his final lap. Got to within half a second of Stockton, but then both of them were jumped by the stellar effort of Adrian Steffen on his final lap. Jack Stiles is still powering on his 4th and final effort. A 47.29 is his best so far. 45.6 is the benchmark that he's chasing. I don't think it's attainable based off his first 3 laps, but we'll see how close he can get. He's got no challenge from behind, which is crucial for him. He can sort of put caution to the wind here and really lob it through the Porsche curves in the final chicane, because Dwayne Burns, Sheridan, Stevens, Bowen, they're all done for the session. So Stiles will rip it through this final sector and see what he can achieve. And what he can achieve is an early exit, because he's decided to pull it off and he's done.
He is indeed. So is Cameron Dance, and at the top of the Porsche Cup class, Dance just took another half second out of his fastest time. So he has properly secured pole position now from Harold Stadler by 6/10. We've still got a few drivers here on final laps. J.M. Thomas here, who's currently 7th in GT1, coming up to the first of the 2 chicanes here on the Mulsanne Straight. You can still carry quite a bit of speed through these chicanes. The exit is incredibly important for these flat-out runs down the French National Highway. And Thomas, in qualifying, was not able to get a time in on his 3rd lap. So this is going to be his final run here. And since it's solo qualifying, we've only got 1 minute and 10 left. I don't think he's going to be able to make it to the end of this one.
No, well, I think you're right about that. It'll be a little bit too little, too late for him, which means, Reese, we have ourselves a grid for the Le Mans 2.4.
We do indeed. So it's going to be Thomas Hins on pole position from Adrian Steffen with that, as you said, Ryan, a stellar effort in the final dying minutes of the session. It's going to be Damon Stockton and Mitchell Bales starting off on row 2 with an All-Australian top 5. Matt Andrews in the number 47 starting alongside the American Scott Corbin. Phil Otto and Gavin Barber are going to be starting from 7th and 8th, with the final 3 positions in the top class being taken by Eric Antilli, Julian Mucki, and Pierre Cousin.
Blake Neck will start alongside Pierre Cousin. Well, not quite. in terms of the starting grid he will, but he'll have to leave 10 seconds to him because you'll have the GT1 pole. Jack Styles will be on the outside of that front row. Dwayne Burns, Alexander Sheridan, Daniel Stevens, Shane Bowen, JM Thomas, Jake Manaya, Jake Fox, Jonathan Bain, Adam Cahill, and Connor Brown make up the rest of the GT1 cars in this field.
And it's going to be Cameron Dance on pole by 6/10 in the Porsche Cup class. The Kiwi, the championship leader. His teammate Harold Stadler from Austria will start second alongside Thomas O'Leary. It's going to be Brad Klenk and Dean Alessi starting off row 14, with Jamie Kingscott and Johnny Bell making up the 15th row of this grid. Then it's Sean O'Hara, the last driver to set a time below 4 minutes and 10 seconds. Dean Mole was having a bit of trouble getting started in the qualifying session. He's going to be starting further towards the back of that one, with Ilya Shamov, the last driver to set a time. Sean Rees is going to take up the final spot on the Porsche grid. And of course, we got Robert Northway there, who wasn't able to set a time in the HPD class. He's going to be starting from 12th overall on the grid, I believe, when we get started. And here is where they line up on the run up to the Porsche curves. So they'll all get a bit of time here to divide themselves up, leave the other classes a little bit of space. But then once they exit the Ford chicane, that's when the race is going to start.
Yeah, so having a look at the rulebook, the specific rules for this race, the HPDs can follow the pace car and they are allowed to go off Thomas Hins's guidance once the pace car has peeled off towards pit road. The pole sitters of the trailing classes, so Blake Neck and Cameron Dance, Blake Neck has to leave about 10 seconds to the last HPD car, and then Cameron Dance has to leave about 10 seconds to the last GT1 car. Both of those classes then go on the green. So we'll see about 20 seconds between HPD coming through turn 1 and our Porsches coming through turn 1, which should give us ample opportunity to cover all three classes as they come through there and hopefully spot any dramas that arise, because even though it's 2.4 hours this one, there's always someone who tries the hero move at turn 1, which often isn't just someone trying to be a hero. Someone can be a bit too conservative and you think, here's a chance to gain a spot, and it could just go wrong, can't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely can. Especially in that opening sector of the circuit, turn 1 can be a bit of a problem area for quite a few drivers. You know, it's very open on entry, but then it tightens up massively on the run into the Dunlop chicane. And those curbs, you can use quite a bit of them, but you've got to be very careful that they don't unsettle your car too much. And you certainly don't want to get a slowdown on the first lap by going a bit too far beyond the prescribed track limits. Otherwise, you're going to be all on your lonesome with no slipstream to help you. It's going to be difficult for a lot of drivers out there tonight, and this is the slowest they're going to be going through the Porsche curves for the entire event, and you certainly don't want to be making any mistakes on the first lap. It is a very long race. You've got to try and buy a ticket to the end.
There'll be no safety cars or yellows or 60 zones as they are featured in the real world. Not a factor in iRacing, not in road racing anyway, in that discipline. So it's a straight 2.4 sprint, as you will, from green to checkered. We're going to have a few pit stops. There's going to be plenty of strategy, plenty of intrigue, plenty of racing. How is this going to play out in the virtual France, in front of a virtual packed house? Always cool, that flyover. Started over in LeMans race and iRacing. Here we go, Reese.
Here we go indeed. Thomas Hins takes the racing line through the Ford chicanes and gets going, but it looks like it was a slightly better start there from Adrian Steffen, but he had to hold back. There's already been a spin at the back of the HPD class. Scott Corbin has looped it as there goes Damon Stockton up the inside of Adrian Steffen into turn 1. He's going to have the outside then for the Dunlop chicane. Can he hold it around the outside? He certainly can. But Steffen is going to really push him as we have a start here in the GT1 class. Blake Neck getting off to a very good launch there versus Jack Styles. And just like Damon Stockton. Dwayne Burns from third, having a proper run here coming into turn one, but Styles gives him a good amount of room and is going to stay ahead into the Dunlop chicane. The Porsches, meanwhile, have gotten off to a reasonable start too. No dramas there with Cameron Dance. Thomas O'Leary actually overtaking Harold Stadler for second place as the battling starts to begin.
Yeah, O'Leary actually bounced off Stadler's door coming through the final chicane. And interesting, both GT1 and Porsches deviated slightly from the race-specific rules on the website and waited until they were through the last chicane and then went. Which doesn't seem like an issue, but they just both elected to leave even more time to the class in front, which just seems safer, if anything. So there's now an even bigger split between classes. It does mean that HPDs will probably catch them a bit quicker, if anything, and lap traffic will become a factor. But here we go already, right at the front. Damon Stockton under pressure and under the toe of Adrian Stefan, who goes straight to the front.
Indeed, and you'll notice that there's no Thomas Hinz. The reason is we completely missed it as we were getting the start for the other classes. Hinsey actually had a big slide in the opening S's and went into the gravel trap. He's now all the way at the back of the HPD class, and he's fighting to get his way forward. He's just making his way past Julian Mookie now, but Stefan versus Stockton up at the front, coming down into the Mulsanne corner at the very southern end of the circuit. Stefan defends from Stockton. It looks like the top four have started to break away from the rest of the field. This is going to be another big slipstreaming opportunity.
Is that damage on Stefan's car, or is that part of the paint scheme?
I think it's part of the paint scheme.
Stockton gave him a little hit there as he tried to pull out. He misjudged that ever so slightly and was fortunate not to actually tip Stefan into a spin. Really tight on lap one. They had another little touch as they tipped it into the right-hander at Indianapolis. Steady on, lads.
Steady on indeed. We see one of the HPDs, an MFR1, making its way through the GT1 field as we're going to get our first virtual racing school replay of the race. The battle between Stefan and Stockton is not dying down at all. Let's see what happened here to Alexander Sheridan coming down to Mulsanne corner. There's a big hump that goes over the top of this hill. It used to be a lot more extreme than it was. Let's see what happened to him here. Oh dear, looks like it may be a little lockup, just sending at the rear end going. He was very lucky to keep it largely out of the wall there as the MFR HPD came through, maybe with a little bit of crossing up versus one of the GT1s there. It looks like back to the front, Damon Stockton has managed to pull a gap here on Adrian Stefan, get back by him on the run up to the Porsche curves, but that battle is showing no signs of abating. It's very hotly contested up at the front. Looks like Stefan has shot through the chicane there. That's going to give a run here to Mitchell Bales.
Out of this one from fourth, already into third, having a think about moving into second, the MFR racer. Not even halfway through lap one, and the top two were already blowing up at each other on the radio. I don't think Stockton realized he clipped Stefan, judging by the radio communication between them when he tried to overtake him the first time. He was much displeased with the secondary contact as well. We're looking back at the Porsche fight. Cameron Dance has not been able to pull away. Oh, Connor Brown just in front of them. The trailing GT1 car has had a spin through the final chicane. He's just kept it out of the fence. Did a really good job to lock it down. He's just going to get it going before Cameron Dance gets to him. I was going to say Dance has not been able to pull away from anyone. O'Leary has gone right with him, as is Stadler, and that's because of that draft, I would suspect. As powerful as it is in the high-powered HPDs, it's probably even more powerful in the, relatively speaking, less powered Porsches.
Yes, indeed. We just checked in briefly with Robert Northway, who's actually made his way a bit further up in classes. My goodness, that's a big slowdown penalty there, I think, for JM Thomas. And the other cars had to take massive avoiding action there. If you run a bit wide off the Tetra Rouge corner and you don't get back onto the circuit before the curve ends, then you're going to get that slowdown penalty. Alexander Sheridan not able to take advantage of that mistake there for JM Thomas. It looks like there's dramas happening all through the field here right off the start. And then having to let Jonathan Bean go was Adam Cahill just behind JM Thomas. Andrews and Bales, meanwhile, for third and fourth, sorry, in the HPD class. Andrews has just made his way past Mitchell Bales there. Matt Andrews, a debut winner in the Majors International region this season, taking race 2 of the Musket 250, the Tour Modifieds at New Hampshire. He's looking for a little bit more glory here in the HPD class at Le Mans. Adrian Stefan might be in a little bit of trouble here, because he's allowing Damon Stockton to get away, and he's a bit out of maximum draft range now, which means that Andrews and Bales may just blast by him if he can't get some semblance of pace back. For Stockton, though, I think the main issue is he has to just keep hitting his marks. He has to maximize every single corner, try and keep that gap the way it is so that no one can best him.
Yeah, and I wonder if Stefan just got a little bit flustered by the slightly frenetic opening 14 kilometers to this race and is just trying to recover some composure now, running in second. He's only about a second and a half off the race lead, but yeah, you're right, he's lost the draft a little bit, which will be affecting him. Thomas Hins, meanwhile, on this lap has worked his way by Pierre Cousin and Robert Northway, so he's back into 6th position, and he's, what is he, about, there you go, 9 seconds behind the race leader, which is a second closer than he was at the start of the lap. So he's making good progress both on the leaderboard and in terms of the timing board too, which is good news if you're a Thomas Hinton supporter.
Yes, indeed, but he's got a while to go before he can pick up some more draft. Maybe he'll be hoping for some help from Robert Northway there. They can trade places down the straight, give each other the draft, and try and get themselves up to that lead battle, which we check back in with here. It's Matt Andrews into second now versus Adrian Stefan. He's already made that pass, and Mitchell Bales might just try to follow him through here. Oh, you see how much of the runoff area they take on the exit of Tetra Rouge, and like I said, you have to get back onto the circuit before the curve ends, otherwise you get a slowdown penalty. All of them, I think, escaping that for the time being, or maybe not, because Adrian Stefan had to lift off there and let Mitchell Bales go.
We ever catch what happened to Gavin Barber?
I don't think we did. He somehow found himself there at the very back of the HPD grid. I'm going to go back and check.
Because I just watched him go and pass Blake Neck and Jack Stiles to just put himself ahead of the GT1, so he had got himself jumbled up with them. So it wasn't a great opening lap for him. He's 42 seconds off the HPDs, and I wonder if he maybe had to start from pit lane. He might have missed the start completely.
Yeah, we just heard from our director that he actually started behind the HPDs. Yeah, it looks like it was a pit lane start for Gavin Barber there. I just went back and checked. He did come out of the pits when the green flag flew, so he'll be working his way forward quite a bit. And we just saw Daniel Stevens bringing the MFR Aston Martin into the pit lane for an early stop there. I'm not too sure what the reason is for that one. Maybe forgot to put some race fuel in the car, maybe deciding to offset the strategy a little bit, because this being a 2.4-hour race, you're probably going to get 2 pit stops in at least the HPDs and the GT1s.
So here's an interesting story. Well, good timing, Jay. We're looking at Thomas O'Leary. If we look out the back... Oh,
no. Slow down for Dance.
If you look out the back, you'll notice there's no Harold Stadler, because he also got a slowdown coming through the exit of the Porsche curves. And so he had to slow right up and serve his, which put him right in front of Brad Klenk. So both of the Texense Fitzstyle cars getting slowdowns within about a quarter of a lap of each other. Great news for O'Leary. Relieves the pressure from behind. Takes the car in front of him out of the throttle. Puts him to the lead of the race.
Does indeed, and the slowdowns on the exit of Tetra Rouge certainly bite. That's certainly not going to be the last time we see that happening to drivers. But now Thomas O'Leary, he hasn't quite been able to break that versus Cameron Dance. He'll probably be looking over his shoulder for quite a few more laps to come. Here's Jake Manhire and J.M. Thomas, 6th and 7th in GT1. And they're off in their own little pack. They are the closest battle in the GT1 class right now. Jake Manhire is up 2 spots from where he started. J.M. Thomas has not been able to find his way forward, but have a look at the strength of the draft there. You see how much momentum J.M. Thomas is gaining there as they come into the Indianapolis corner. Very difficult section of the track, and
untouched that curve.
Yeah, certainly. That got Thomas very crossed up there.
It's a very difficult corner, as you were saying, Reese. And Thomas demonstrated for us beautifully as we watch from the gearbox or from the back of Manhire's car that you have to drive around that apex curve. You can sit up on it, but if you grab the inside of it, it's raised up a bit, so it'll unsettle your car and shoot you wide. And that really affects you because you've got to then be on the right-hand side to bring yourself back for the left-hander. And it puts you off for not just the right, puts you off for about 2 corners and can cost you a handful. So it's a really crucial one. And Thomas, only now just recovering, but then runs wide again.
Oh.
Another crucial one, because that opens up to a straight.
Yeah, indeed. And to boot, that left-hander at the end of the Porsche curves is off camber, a bit tighter than it looks. So you've really got to nail it every single time, which is nigh on impossible to do. So that battle's going to continue. Here once again is Adrian Steffen, who's still holding on to the back of the top 3 here. Adrian Steffen actually, no, he's fallen behind Eric Antilli there. He's now in 5th place, so there's been more issues there for Adrian Steffen. It's a bit of a shame to see, considering how well he did in qualifying. The race is starting to bite him.
Well, if we remember back, Steffen's qualifying effort only really came right at the death. He was sitting in 6th he was sitting 6th until his final lap put him 2nd. So it could just be a case of he's falling back to where his regular pace is. Now, if you want to talk about big names having some issues, Dan Stevens has acquired himself a 61-second stop and hold because he did not get himself cleared of a slowdown that he's copped around this racetrack.
Okay, so further issues there for Daniel Stevens. I wonder if that's the reason why we saw him come into the pits that time.
So he's already taken it.
Yeah. So it's not an early stop for him. That was a penalty serve as Steffen gets back by Antilli coming into the Indianapolis complex. And this right here is Arnage. Another corner that's been here ever since the track's inception in 1921. And you look just behind these two, you see Thomas Hinz now starting to creep up onto the back of this battle as well, continuing to work his way forward. And in the next couple of laps, if he plays his cards right, he might be back up to 4th position.
9.4 off the race lead, showing 8.3 on live shots. So he maintained the gap to Stockton, and as soon as he got a whisker of a draft from that car in front of Antilli, he's shut down the gap to the race leader. So he's really, really quick out there, and he's got plenty of time up his sleeve to continue to bring that down and could very well get back to the front by the end of this race. Just needs to be very mindful of the time remaining and be smart about how he gets by this traffic here. Don't fire it in from too far back and try a bold move where it's not necessary. Is he close enough for turn 1? Probably not. He showed the nose, but he didn't ever get close enough to really challenge or realistically think about it. And if anything, it probably helps him because now he'll carry that draft up the Mulsanne straight, probably go all the way by Antilli, and then get the draft off Steffen as well.
Yeah, good old double draft for Thomas Hinz. He'll have to be careful of a little bit of aero push through Tetra Rouge, though. Does he make it back on before the end of the curb? He does indeed, so no slowdown for him. And now it is a question of draft, and we'll get an idea of how powerful this draft is as Antilli goes defensive, does a little bit of weaving down the first part of the Mulsanne. Now, the entry to these chicanes is incredibly important. Mulsanne 1 is the name of this chicane here, and it's got a very fast entry. You do have to brake a little bit earlier than you expect, though. Otherwise, you're just going to understeer and compromise your line. But it looks like Antilli hasn't quite maximised the exit there, so Hinsey has a run on him by the time they've actually exited the corner, and it looks like a little bit of a lift there for Eric Antilli, letting Thomas Hinz go. He realises there's probably no sense in trying to fight him too hard at this early stage of the race. We've still got well over 2 hours to go.
Mine is still fresh. Body is still fresh as well. Well, I say the body is still fresh for probably all of these drivers except one. As we just have a look at O'Leary and Cameron Dance, the gap between them is still pretty tight. It's about where it's been ever since O'Leary got by Cameron Dance, thanks to Cameron's slowdown, which came on the exit of Tetra Rouge. Just come at a full circle and go back to that point I was making. Mitchell Bales. So, this is going to be a real test for him. It's his first round back for quite some time in this Majors series. He's recovering from 2 fractured hips that he picked up earlier this year after he tried to take on a car while riding a bike and didn't win. And discovered that he bounces a little bit when encountering those sorts of issues. And so, yeah, recovering from those fractured hips and back out on the sim now, but I think 2.4 hours will probably test him. He certainly picked a hell of a race to get back into it.
Yeah, certainly did, but I think he's doing very well. All things considered, he's kept himself out of trouble in his holding position as, oh, that is a problem there for Alexander Sheridan. He's overshot the braking zone there for Mulsanne 2 and has had to take to the escape road. And that has allowed Shane Bowen back past him. Sheridan actually made up the position on Bowen very recently. So on board here with Sheridan, and then, oh yeah, just braked way too late, locked up the fronts there and has to navigate the tyre chicane that serves as a slowdown penalty in and of itself. It's the main reason they're there. Otherwise, you can just straight line the chicanes, and nobody really wants that if you're running this layout of the track at least. You can run the historic layout of Le Mans, which just has the full uninterrupted Mulsanne straight, but for obvious reasons, we're not running that here today.
We would rather not give drivers the luxury of being able to make themselves a cup of tea throughout the race, each and every lap, as Dance continues to lay in the slipstream here. Now, something that we should raise is the fuel-saving factor. I think Porsches of any of the categories is going to be the most prominent one as we look at Dance, and now we see Mookie off in the gravel.
That's at the opening turns, and the DPR machine there of Phil Otto had to take avoiding action off the exit. But yeah, fuel saving is certainly a good point to make here. When you're in the slipstream of someone, you can really afford to lift off hundreds of meters before the actual braking zone and save quite a bit of fuel every single lap. But tell me the reason why the Porsches are going to probably be the most important for it.
Well, I heard from a driver, Cameron Dance. There's no point keeping it a secret. I think everyone knows that Cameron's our insider. His unfortunate connection to SimSpeed. I wish it didn't exist. So we love you, Cam. No, Cameron was telling us, as he does, help us out with some information each and every race, which we love him for, that the Porsche needs 2 stops for fuel and a splash and dash. So my reasoning is, if you can save enough to not have to do a splash and dash, that could be quite beneficial.
Yeah, it could result in a big advantage. All depends on how much that splash and dash is, though. because you know, if it's something like 2 or 3 liters, then yeah, I reckon you can definitely save that and then some over the race distance. But if it's something like 10 liters or over, then you're going to have to work pretty hard to save that amount. But that said, in the slipstream here behind Thomas O'Leary, Cameron Dance has quite the luxury of being able to lift off into just about every major braking zone on the lap. Here is Styles and Burns. They've been ebbing and flowing in their gap between each other for second place in GT1. Jack Styles has done well to hold on to that second place, but Burns here starting to catch him in the draft. I think for the Avatar Auto Racing driver of Dwayne Burns, main idea here is, once again, to keep hitting your marks. Don't take too much curb in certain places. Don't overshoot the braking zones. Make sure that you're still in that draft range, because, you know, he can obviously save a little bit of fuel, and it might not translate into not having to do a splash and dash in the GT1 class, but it can decrease your time spent stopped in the lane.
Certainly can. Just saw our first cars sort of starting to get lapped now on the track. Dean Alessi probably going a bit too wide, locking it up and going straight through the chicane. That's a good demonstration of how not to get lapped. You don't want to be putting yourself off that much. You need to really just hold your racing line, because you're still having your own race when you get caught by these faster cars. And Thomas Hinds was one of those HBDs going by him. He's caught up to the back of Mitchell Bales. In doing so, clawed another second out of the gap for the race leader. He had been sitting at just 8.6 back after going by Steppanen and Tilley. As soon as he caught whiff of Bales' toe, he dropped it down to 7.2. Once he goes by Bales, he'll probably struggle to get any closer than 7 seconds away from Stockton until he catches Andrews. The issue there is Andrews is doing a really good job, Reese. He's staying about 2 seconds away from Stockton, and all that gap is one lapped car in a bad place for Stockton, and Andrews will be right there on him. In fact,
absolutely,
that might have already happened, or Stockton might have caught a slowdown, because look now, that's not 2 seconds. That's half a second.
Yeah, certainly, and I can see that Damon Stockton had to make his way by the Porsche of Johnny Bell on the exit of Tetra Rouge. So that is a very bad place to come up to a lapped car, and that is the reason why the gap is so low. Right on board then with Matt Andrews as he chases down Damon Stockton. Thomas Hinds, meanwhile, has made his way past Mitchell Bales and will now look to make his way up to these two guys. It's a little bit more of a draft here for Matt Andrews, as there's another lapped car on exit here for Damon Stockton. Jamie Kingscott moving out of the way there to let them go, and just snatching a bit of draft off the rear of that Porsche is Matt Andrews, trying to get every bit of pace he can. Next car up the road is Dean Mole, who we saw having those issues in qualifying, but Dean has made up quite a few positions here. He is up 4 from where he started, which is great to see.
They're coming up on a lot of lap traffic now. They've got Daniel Stevens up the road in a GT1 car. He'll be slightly tricky to pass. They've got Dean Moll, as you mentioned. Brad Klenk, Harold Stadler, and then the Porsche leaders, Dance and O'Leary. They won't be too keen to jump out of the way. Dance will want them to be overtaken in the same fell swoop. It's always tricky when you're in a slower class car. You know you've got a HPD, in this case, coming up behind you. You've got to obey the blue flags, but at the same time, you can't... Well, you can just roll out of the throttle and get completely out of the way, but at the same time, you're not going to, are you? Because if the guy out front doesn't do that, he's going to gain about 2 seconds on you. Every time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that is the great difficulty of multi-class racing, but I think it also really depends on which area of the circuit you come up to that traffic. Like right there at the exit of the Porsche curves is a very terrible place to come up on traffic. Exit of Tetra Rouge, exit of the Mulsanne chicanes, etc. And have a look at that. making their way past the Porsche there, and that means that Matt Andrews is going to have to hold back slightly here through the final couple of chicanes and lose a couple more seconds there to Damon Stockton. That is that in action. That's Brad Klenk that they've just had to make their way past, and the gap is now back out to 1.4 seconds.
Yeah, that was unfortunate for Andrews, but that was great for Stockton. A bit of the good luck coming back after his bad luck, almost a full lap earlier. Intilli is still right on the back of Adrian Steffen here for P5 in the overall fight. Remember, Steffen fell back early on, and Intilli caught up to him pretty quick. But they've stuck together quite a bit here. Oh no, Steffen going to get held up by Dean Mole. Is Intilli going to get held up through Tetra Rouge? Not quite to the same extent.
Meanwhile, battle in GT1. It's Jake Manire and JM Thomas back at it again. Manire making his way past Thomas into Indianapolis, and Thomas just running wide there in the first part of Indianapolis. Manire does the same through the second part of the complex. So they stay together, and that is almost into the rear of Manire for JM Thomas. Getting on the brakes just a little bit too late there.
I reckon he did give him a little nudge. Oh, one off in the background. Who was that? Just caught that out the back of the picture then. The MFR car, boulder wide. The Porsche of Sean O'Hara went a bit deep. There was a GT1 in the foreground. I think the GT1 might have scared O'Hara wide. As I'm just catching on my own screen here, O'Leary and Dance were caught in a very great spot for both them and the HPD class leaders. A straight line.
Indeed, they've both made their way past, have Damon Stockton and Matt Andrews, with barely any issues there. Jack Stiles, meanwhile, looks like he's fallen down to third, and he's having big trouble there through the opening sector of the circuit. That rear end having a lot of trouble getting kept in check. Dwayne Burns has made his way past in that, unusually for Avatar Auto Racing, green Aston Martin DBR9. Of course, that's probably inspired by the real-life liveries that this car ran when it was racing in the real world.
Inzy. Steady Inzy.
Yeah, I just caught that myself into Indianapolis with the Porsche leaders. Gets it done, though.
Yeah, Mitchell Bales just watching that. Hoping it didn't go wrong, because it would likely have collected him as well in a very tight part of the racetrack. All the intricacies of laps cars. It's going to unfold many more times over the rest of this race. We're just half an hour in to 2 hours and 25 minutes of running here at the Le Mans 2.4 hour over the Majors Series, the International region, and around the outside of Daniel Stevens goes Thomas Hinds. Bales has a bit of an easier time of it on his teammate. In fact, did he... Bales just apologised over the radio. I wonder if there was a little bit of a hip check or...
Yeah, I think, well, it came at a very awkward place there for Daniel Stevens. He was already letting Thomas Hinds go, and Bales, I think, just decided to sneak up the inside of the left-hander, which obviously pushed Stevens very wide with the greater reliance on mechanical grip of the Aston Martin DBR9. I'm sure Daniel Stevens will take it as intended. He's a good man, is Daniel Stevens.
There's a slowdown out there as well.
Yeah, there is.
Stevens ran wide, so it's a double whammy every time you go wide out there. It's a real kick in the...
unmentionables.
Yeah, those. Thanks, Reese.
Oh, this gap.
Oh, no, Stevens! Hang on to it, buddy! And now get out of the way! Oh, good job! Oh,
my goodness.
Steffen!
No. Oh.
Steffen!
The Porsche
he had
goes for
two
slide.
tyres in the grass on the outside of a Porsche trying to squeeze by Stevens-stricken Aston Martin. That could have been wild. Have a look at this. He got over the curb on the inside and it unsettled the car. He was on the racing line. He quickly got off the brakes to let the car through. And then watch this for Stefan.
Oh, goodness me. That is a real heart and mouth moment there. And
Oh, no. And
well,
Stefan's just looped it at the Mulsanne.
Jeez. That was O'Leary, the leader of the Porsche class. We didn't catch that when it happened. Ilya Shamov, for some reason, just stamping on the brakes, coming out of Tete Rouge and coming back onto the racing line in front of O'Leary. I don't know about that.
And further up the road, Stefan was spinning again. He pulled off that remarkable save and then just spun at the first Mulsanne chicane, all on his lonesome. I don't know what just happened in a span of 10 seconds, but that was crazy. All right, so let's try and assess the damage on O'Leary's car.
Well, it looks
it's
like...
pretty bad.
Yeah, the front left is very dented right now. He comes up over the rise. You'll be able to see it. Well, there's an HPD in the way. There we go. So that is aerodynamically suboptimal there for Thomas O'Leary. But Cameron Dance, I don't know if he's going to try and take advantage of that and jet on by. You do see Harold Stadler just behind them as well in the second Fitzstye Porsche. He's made his way back up to the rear of these guys, and in the midst of everything that's been happening, I think that's one thing that we've missed and one thing that we should highlight, his fight back there. He's got HPDs going by him though, coming into the Indianapolis section. That's Robert Northway that's just gone by him with that heritage livery evoking the Audi R10s that raced in the late 2000s here.
Yeah, Reese is still catching up on replays of the drama from a minute or so ago.
Yeah, goodness, yeah, quite a bit happened there in the space of a couple of corners. But it was all triggered there by Daniel Stevens' off there. Of course, Ilya Shamov in that Porsche, he wanted to try and avoid, but right in the midst of it, Adrian Stefan was looking to make his way by Shamov. So, I mean, when something happens on track and you've already committed to your line, it's very difficult to make any alterations.
I think Shamov just panicked. He got out wide, was having a slide, slammed on the brakes, and then I think maybe just kind of lost track of where he was. Probably saw he would have probably got the slowdown message as well pop up at the same time, which might have slightly distracted him. So, crucially here, O'Leary has stayed out. He's not brought it into the lane. Seems like the damage isn't affecting him quite as much as it might do. So he's gotten away with it. He's actually pulled away from Dance. They got separated by a lapped car, but by a quicker car, Pierre Kazan. So O'Leary dodges a bullet. If he dodges a bullet, even though he couldn't dodge the Porsche.
Yes, indeed. And we've also continued checking in on that battle between Alexander Sheridan and Shane Bowen in GT1. We saw them running very closely. Matt Andrews, meanwhile, has brought the gap at the front in the HPD field down to under 0.6 of a second. Got a little bit of traffic just up ahead of them there in the Aston Martin of Connor Brown, who's currently running second last in the GT1s. He hasn't had quite as bad luck as Daniel Stevens has had in the opening laps of this race. But Stockton's continuing to hold on nicely to the front as, oh no, the 386 JM Thomas. Oh no, we saw him battling hard with Jake Manhire just before. What has happened to him? Let's check out once again, thanks to our friends at Virtual Racing School. So he wasn't past Manhire when this happened. Is it another problem in Indianapolis? Make his way into the corner, and oh, the rear end gets away from him. He gets onto the gravel and then whack into the wall. That's a big shame.
Decent sized hit, straight onto the... They're front engine, aren't they? Straight onto the engine.
Yep, they are.
Which will be probably enough to bring him to pit lane for one of the spare cars. The spare car they're allowed in the Majors Series. Looks like fatigue's already starting to set in on 1 hour, 49-minute mark still remaining on this one, which is worrying signs.
Yes, indeed. Well, Alexander Sheridan and Shane Bowen. Shane, of course, also running the Heritage Aston Martin Racing livery. Of course, they've got some sim racing related sponsors on that thing. Both Shane and Dwayne Burns up ahead for Avatar Auto Racing, and they've been quite consistent in the Majors Series. Been able to keep themselves in the fight for top 5 positions at most rounds. Looks like Dwayne Burns on his lonesome here as Blake Neck has just coasted away from everyone else in that class. And there is Jack Stiles, the gap down to 3rd. So Dwayne Burns doing very well there to hold on to that 2nd place, keep the gap nice and large. Northway and Corbin, meanwhile, for 7th and 8th in HPD. And Scott Corbin, he had that that spin on the start in the HPD, so he's been trying his best to work his way back up through the field. He's currently 2 positions away from where he started, and he's going to be getting a nice draft there from the New Zealander.
Yeah, Corbin was a full second quicker on the previous lap, so a lot of pace up the sleeve of the number 54. We'll see what he looks like this time round in terms of lap times. He might have been affected. He's most likely been affected by some of the aero push on this lap. 39.0 the previous trip around. 38.6 actually goes quicker that time. But Northway actually went 1.3 seconds quicker than he had gone previous lap. So it looks like Northway, if anything, had made a mistake 2 laps ago.
Maybe encountered a lap car as well.
Yeah. Still, there's not much to separate them, only about a second or so. You can see how much he's lost over the last 3 laps. Almost half a second, almost a second, and just there, a tenth and a half. Pulls it back ever so slightly. Up front, at the very front, the gap is 1 second. Stockton to Andrews. Inseparable, these two seem. Wondering when we'll see our first stops of the race as well. I imagine it'll be a 2-stop race for everyone, which would suggest, well, what is 2.4 divided by 2? 3, 4. 8? 8? What?
80 minutes.
80 minutes.
On average, but it's going to be a little bit less, I think, for the HPDs. They don't have quite as small a fuel tank as the modern LMP2 that's on the iRacing service, the Dallara P217. That car has a 75-litre tank, but I think the HPD has quite a bit more in the tank. In fact, I've entered the server in spectator mode as one, so I'm going to check here. Actually, no. 60 kilograms is the maximum amount of fuel in the HPD, so that's even less than that of the Dallara P217. Wondering if we're going to be seeing these drivers come in at about the 50-minute mark, which isn't too far away.
Porsche has 100 litres, and the Porsches are expecting a 2-stop. So what 60 kilograms equate to in litres, Reese?
Oh, it depends on the temperature, because that's the main reason why a lot of fuel tanks in top-level racing cars use kilograms to measure the amount of fuel, because as the temperature goes up, the density of fuel decreases. So volume measurements like litres don't necessarily work, as that's a problem for Jack Stiles. He was running in 3rd, but that is a spin at the S's, and he has got quite a bit of damage there on the front end. And
I don't think his tyres are working.
Well, actually, it looks like he took a bit too much curb on the inside of the left-hander and just hit the grass. That sent him for a spin. So here's the replay of it. A little bit too much grass, bit of a bump, unsettles the rear, and then head on into the wall. That is a big smash, and his engine is smoking. I think he's in danger of being done. That's a very awkward place for that to happen, because you're going to have to pretty much go around the entire lap to get it back to the pits and get your spare car.
He was running 2nd in class.
Yeah, he was.
He's now towing back to the pit lane. And a tow back to the pit lane at Le Mans is a pretty big one.
Oh, yeah. You're going to be sitting there for quite some time waiting for that to happen. Here's a replay, meanwhile, of... oh, no, sorry. Battle for the lead. I got a bit
Here's a replay
crossed
of
up
some
there.
live action.
Yes. What is a... could you say that it's a replay with the maybe half a second delay that we get sometimes? Either way, the battle for the lead is right on, because right on the back of Damon Stockton is Matt Andrews. And I'm not too sure how long the HPD can go in this current form that it's in on the iRacing service, but when I did races at Le Mans, you could make it 11, 12 laps on a full tank, so they're on lap 12 at the moment. I would expect them to be coming in pretty soon.
Well, let's see how this one plays out. Wonder if there could be any sort of undercut. If you don't go right to the end of the fuel tank and you don't run it completely dry, and you've saved a bit of fuel behind, say you're Matt Andrews now, it will take less time to fill your tank back up again than it will if you're Damon Stockton and you pit and your tank is completely dry. That could then allow Andrews to undercut Stockton in the pits.
Good indeed, but question then becomes, if Stockton finds himself in second, will he waste no time drafting up to the back of Andrews and just getting the lead back again? Because at a track like Le Mans, often it's not hugely beneficial to be the car in front. I mean, I think I might have just talked myself into a corner there, because we got to remember the fuel saving aspect of it too. Matt Andrews will be able to be saving a bit more fuel here than Stockton. And as they come into the Indianapolis section, right on his bumper once again. I love this corner. Bit of public road there. It's been part of the circuit for its whole existence. Ever since the early 1920s, cars have been making their way along this stretch of road, and that's one of the things I love about these historic circuits like Le Mans. There is a real sense of history to this place, this feeling that you are traversing the very same stretches of tarmac that the Bentley boys of the 1920s did, that the magnificent Audi versus Peugeot battles of the late 2000s did. Such a wonderful circuit.
What I'm going to be interested to see, and I'll be keeping an eye on, is what does O'Leary do when he pits? Does he take his spare car or not? Because he's still leading the Porsche race. It doesn't look like it's affecting it. But there is significant damage there, it seems. Now,
Well, I'll tell you what. Oh, here we go. Pitters up at the front in our LMP2 class, and they both come in at the same time, have Stockton and Andrews, so no undercut there.
J.M. Thomas from GT1 pitting as well in front of them. Dwayne
There's
Burns is in
Alexander
the lane.
Sheridan.
Dwayne Burns, who was second in GT1 class. Alexander Sheridan. Thomas is towing. So he also happens to be there. Adam Cahill. They're all coming in on lap 11 here.
Yeah, so it looks like you can go about the same distance in a GT1 car as you can with an HPD, 11 laps or so. But I think back to this battle here, O'Leary versus Dance, I'm looking back at O'Leary's lap times, and he's actually setting his fastest times of the race right now. That damage is not affecting him whatsoever. Before he got the damage, he was doing, low to mid 104s. Then, of course, there was a bit of a dip when he had to get out of the throttle a bit with that contact with Shamov, and then he went right back to setting mid 403s. So I question whether he will want to take his spare car at the pits, because it doesn't seem like the damage is affecting him all that much. Maybe he'll just take some optional repairs when he eventually comes in.
I doubt it. I wouldn't take any repairs. Unless
Well,
I would only take... If
You can get a
I had-
couple of them done while the car's taking other bits
Yeah.
of service. Like,
I
granted,
wouldn't-
you won't take a ton of them, but it'll still take a little bit of repair time off.
12 laps for the GT1. And HPD. So some of the GT1 cars that had fallen an extra lap down kept going because they were only on lap 11. So we've got a very confusing bag of people right now who are in, out, who've already been in and gone back out of pit lane. And in come the Porsches.
No.
Damn, I hate that entry to the corner.
Yeah. Yeah, especially in Sim World, drivers always taking that pit entry to kind of open up the entry to the chicanes. As just saw Phil Otto there in the pits. Damon Stockton is back out on circuit, and he's just ahead here of Robert Northway, who has not taken his stop yet. So it looks like a bit over half of the HPD field have taken their stops now. We've got Hinz and Tilly and Corbin running top 3. They haven't taken their stop. Northway, obviously, and also Mitchell Bales.
So Hinz, by being able to draft up the back of so many people, has been able to save a bit of extra fuel.
He has indeed, and it looks like he might be doing more of the same here. No, sorry, I'm still looking at Northway and Stockton. Northway obviously taking advantage there of a little bit of extra fuel saving. He is making life a bit difficult for Matt Andrews, though, because that's one more car between him and Damon Stockton. It'll be a little bit distracting. Hinz, meanwhile, making his way through the Porsche curves. We can expect him in at the end of this lap. Blake Nick, meanwhile, our GT1 leader, is in.
Hinz.
Looks like Shane Bowen in as well.
Hinz comes in. I'm going to be interested to see where Hinz comes out. Should be about 6.5 seconds behind our race leaders. And my word, the LeMans pit entry siren is over the top.
Oh, yeah. Fantastic.
It wouldn't surprise me at all if Hinz has been able to find some sort of ground through this pit cycle on Andrews and Stockton, especially if they've got caught up by these slower cars.
Yeah, Matt Andrews then having to make his way around Jake Manhire around the outside. He's lost a ton of time to Damon Stockton there. The gap has just opened up. See if Robert Northway goes for the pits here. We expect that he will. In comes Jonathan Bean up ahead of Damon Stockton. And, well, it looks like Northway avoiding the pits once again. So he's going pretty long, actually, on that first stint.
Hinz just comes out of pit lane now. So, certainly not with the leaders, but we didn't expect that. Probably still about 6.5 seconds back. So, he's probably maintained the gap that he'd gotten back to before the pit stops. He'll try to work on that some more over this next stint.
Indeed he will.
Blake Neck leading GT1. Haven't seen him in the lane yet. I don't.
No, we just saw him in the lane a lap ago. It looks like he's just come out of it.
You sure?
So he remains there in the lead. Burns and Bowen complete the top 3. Alexander Sheridan has been passed there by Shane Bowen in the midst of all that. So Avatar Auto Racing with 2 cars on the podium now. They're doing pretty well, as we usually expect them to in the international division of the Majors Series. Now, it's lap 14 for the Porsches. And if they don't come in on this lap, then I will certainly be surprised.
The biggest tank lies with the Porsches, it would seem.
No, they stay out again.
So 3 stops for the rest of the field, 2 stops for these guys, you think?
Yeah, I guess that's it.
And a splash and dash, potentially.
Indeed. Potentially for those Porsches.
How low profile are those HPDs? You could really tell from that shot, by the way. They disappear from sight behind the Porsches. And you get a front-on shot down the straight. Probably behind the Aston as well. Headlights flashing from the HPDs just to let the Aston know that they're coming. And they want some racing room.
It always surprises me just how small prototypes are, because you look at them in isolation and they seem like bigger cars than they actually are. But once you put them next to the slower class cars, the GT1s and the Porsches, really puts them in perspective. They are tiny race cars, and I mean, obviously they'd have to be, being so light and so low profile down to the ground, but still, I have to take a second look or so every time I see those cars together, because, yeah, again, you look at the prototypes in isolation, you think, oh yeah, they look huge, but they're not.
All different shapes and sizes. Race cars coming, and HPDs certainly quite unique in their particular form, as in comes Scott Corbin, the number 54, gets it down to a measly 60 kilometers an hour.
The horn blares once again.
The dance continues to stalk O'Leary. Harold Stadler's broken well away from Brad Clank. In fact, to the point which I suspect... No, hasn't made a stop. Clank's hadn't... He hasn't made a stop, but he has made an error, I would say.
Yeah, Clank has fallen off the back of Stadler, hasn't he?
He was right on him. Only a few laps ago. Well, there's 18 seconds between them. The only big fight, really, in Porsches is between the top two. The rest of them are quite separated at the moment.
The only driver to come into the pits in the Porsche class has been Sean O'Hara, and I think that might have been for a penalty, because that was maybe on lap 4 or something like that, as Robert Northway finally makes his first stop in the number 46 HPD. The team cars come together. Here's Sean O'Hara with the MFR HPD of Gavin Barber. Both these drivers having quite a few issues during the race. Barber, of course, starting from the pit lane. And there is Daniel Stevens in the lane for what should be his first scheduled stop of the race.
Just watching our two class leaders to see if they come in on lap 13 of their race. No, they don't.
Okay.
Now, Thomas Hins in the HPD came in on lap... Thomas Hins came in at the end of lap 13, but his stop was on lap 14. He crossed the line in pit lane. So realistically, he did 13 laps, not 14. So they're only going one lap longer than what Hinsey did in the HPD. It just seems like an eternity due to how much slower they are. Because while they've just hit the beginning of lap 14 now, Thomas Hins, Damon Stockton are already halfway through lap 15.
Yeah, the HPD about 30 seconds faster around Le Mans than the Porsche 911 GT3 Cuppers on board here with Julian Mucci. We saw going for a little bit of a spin earlier behind Pierre Cousin. This is the battle for 9th place in HPD. It's a long way up to the next position. Eric Antilli is currently making his way through the second kink on this straight that they're making their way down. The first kink for these guys coming up right now. You see how much the draft comes in towards the end of these straights, but doesn't come in time there for Mookie to try and make his way past Pierre into the Indianapolis section. This is the closest thing to a home race for Pierre Cousin that he will probably get. Pierre from Belgium, part of the Benelux club. So physically, he's one of the closest to the Le Mans circuit. Harold Stadler also pretty close, living in Austria. And when I say close, I mean relatively. If you're talking about nearly 1,000 kilometers, maybe a bit under. Definitely closer than we are in Australia, Ryan. It's pretty much on the other side of the world for us.
Closer than Perth.
Yeah.
Is it?
Well, I think Perth might be a little bit closer to France than Queensland is.
You're
Oh dear. Pierre taking a little bit of an adventure over the anti-cut curbs there at the end of the lap. That's what can happen if you overshoot the Ford chicane. He goes defensive though, coming into turn 1, but Mookie powering around the outside, off the racing line into the Dunlop chicane, but Cousin lets him go.
Well.
Oh. Hello, something's happened here to Thomas O'Leary.
O'Leary's just lost the lead of the race. But I think more importantly, I've made a big discovery. Belgium and France only 657 kilometers apart.
Okay. That's still under 1,000 kilometers.
And you are 4,000 plus kilometers away from me.
Indeed I am. And it looks like it was a slowdown for Thomas O'Leary. The exit of Tete Rouge bites again, and the battle's not over here between Mookie and Cousin. Look at this. Side by side behind the GT1. They both have to back out. Adam Cahill is just minding his own business here through the first of the Mulsanne chicanes, and Cousin back by Mookie. They'll both get a bit of a draft here versus the Aston, but Mookie with a little bit more of an exit from that Mulsanne chicane, but he's boxed in here. He's going to have to wait to pull out alongside Pierre Cousin. You see that with no draft, there's not much of a difference in straight line speed between these HPDs and GT1s. They're just hitting 300 on their own.
To the braking the zone, there's quite a difference.
Oh, yeah.
HPD is able to go much deeper into the braking area before they dive onto the brakes, whereas Cahill had to pull the parachute pretty early on in the party there. Looking at Andrews, as we see the 47 Porsche dive into the lane, there's now an Aston Martin between Andrews and Stockton. That could hold Andrews up through the final chicane. It probably will ever so slightly, just on the exit. There's the view back from Damon Stockton, leading outright, as he's done for most of this race, after starting from third. But Matt Andrews is not letting him have it all his own way. Under 90 minutes to go in this one. Still at least a pit stop, probably 2 remaining for our race leaders. 47 we saw dive in was actually the 147 of Jamie Kingscott.
And Mr. Kingscott in the pits there with Dean Moll. Looks to me like Moll is still at a standstill in his box. Johnny Bell making his way into the lane 2 for the Porsches. O'Leary has not been able to...
Here's a thing for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I love my things.
I like things as well.
Well, I'm sure you do. So, it maybe wasn't a mistake from O'Leary, but Dance just decided that they are close to the pit window. He's saved enough fuel, and now is the time to go and pull a gap on O'Leary, as we take a look at a virtual racing school replay of Damon Stockton losing the lead of the race.
Righto. So let's see what happened to him down here. This would have been at the first of the Mulsanne chicanes. They go by the restaurant. You can see in the background there.
KFC?
And what was that?
Was it KFC?
No. Oh dear, that's what happened to him. He just lost the rear coming in the left-hander. Now the KFC is a little bit earlier down the straight. Those buildings that you saw as they came into the braking zone. Oh, it is Hens.
Oh,
So,
hello.
Hensy now up to second as a result of all of this. This has been a great recovery here from second place in the championship, Thomas Hens.
I just got huge Zach Glock vibes then. So Andrew is, Hens has come from nowhere. Not, well, technically, but we knew he was about 6.5 seconds back, didn't we, after that pit stop? He hadn't gained much in the cycle, but that mistake from Stockton's gained him at least a second or two. And now that they're together, they may be able to actually work together to catch Andrews, which in turn will put Hens into the fight and make it a three-way fight for the race lead.
Indeed, it shall. I'm looking forward to that.
Door is open for Thomas Hens once again. As we just saw one of the MF racing cars dive out of pit lane as Cameron Dance dives in, finally, at the end of lap 15. Followed by Thomas O'Leary. The gap between them was about 4 seconds. Now, I'm going to keep an eye on O'Leary and see whether he takes a spare car.
And we'll see just how much fuel Cameron Dance has saved in the slipstream behind O'Leary as well with his pit stop time. Harold Stadler follows them in as well.
Spare car goes on for O'Leary. Goes on. Yeah, they just put a whole new spare car on that car.
Yeah, indeed they did. Just you know, lifted off the wheels and they got a whole assembled Porsche in the garage that they just drop on. Cameron Dance picked up a slight bit of damage to his right front that he has elected not to repair.
Very minor. It probably came off the curbs, if anything. Away he goes. The gap is bigger. Sorry, Larry, but only by probably half a second, I would say.
The pit stop times for those guys, O'Leary and Stadler, both a second slower in the box than Cameron Dance was.
Was half a second off. So he saved a second worth of fuel. Now that gain would have been in that he had a second fuel flow extra still on the tank. Not enough to be able to go an extra lap, but it just meant that there was less to put in. And now he comes out with a huge margin.
Yeah, that he does. There's about a corner separating him and O'Leary at that point of the circuit.
By pulling away right at the end of that stint, he's ensured that even 1 second has ballooned out into a mammoth lead that O'Leary can't just latch back onto him at the draft. Very, very good drive from Cameron Dance over the last few laps to gain himself a comfortable lead.
Yes, indeed. And, I was just looking at Dance myself then, and I think he was clutching it in the braking zone. The revs dropped all the way down on the way into Mulsanne 1, so the fuel save is still on. He's looking to try and eliminate that splash and dash.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see who does need to splash and dash, if any, in our lowest category of the three. The effective Carrera Cup cars. I will admit, the Porsches confuse the daylights out of me when it comes to iRacing. These are the 991 cars, variants of the 911 GT3 Cup car, I think.
Yes.
Yes? Yes. But they are now outdated because the 992 has been introduced in real life. Now, I thought that had come to iRacing, but it hadn't. So the 992 in real life has replaced this car in the Porsche Mobile Super Cup, which runs across Europe. And next year, we'll replace this car in the Australian Carrera Cup as well. It's already being used in a couple of European Carrera Cup series, not just the main Super Cup one. But crucially as well, this car is not the car they use in GT3 racing. Is it not? I thought it was.
It is not. Yeah, I did mention that at the top of the broadcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always been confusing. Like, I think Porsche introduced the 911 GT3 model before GT3 racing was a thing. So Porsche are a bit ahead of the curve there.
Yes.
And
the new Porsche we have on iRacing is the GT3 variant.
Which is actually a GT3. And I think you'll find as well that this GT3 Cup car, when it was first introduced, these regulations that it runs to were intended to be the original GT3 regulations, and they were for a while. But the regulations in GT3 racing got opened up a bit more, and manufacturers started putting a bit more aerodynamic stuff on the cars, and widening them, making them a little bit more racy. And GT3 has now evolved into effectively the top class of GT racing around the world, at least in an international sense. So what you're looking at here with this GT3 Cup car is retro in more ways than one. This is how GT3 was originally intended.
Just to confuse myself even more, I'm pretty sure in Australia, a lot of teams take their Carrera Cup car and do race them in GT categories.
Yeah, they do.
So, technically they are GT cars in Australia.
Yeah.
Just to, add to the confusion a bit. I would love for things to be a bit more streamlined in GT racing across the world. I think everywhere you go, it's different, isn't it? But when you get it all sussed out, it's an amazing category, an amazing group. I love the new 992 that's being introduced in the real world. Hopefully we do get that on iRacing, because it looks to be a great improvement on what we're racing in this race right now, the 911 GT3 Cup.
Yeah, Porsche and their numbering designations.
So yeah, plenty to look forward to out of Porsche. Now, speaking on Porsche, and speaking on their pit stops, no tyres from the top three when they came out through the lane, but the rest of them did take them.
Well, the tyres can go for quite a while on the 911 GT3 Cup machine, so I think it makes sense that the top three decided not to go for them, save a bit of extra time in the pit stop, and maybe at their second stop they'll put some fresh rubber on them.
So it was worth 30 seconds. We just saw Dance's stop as 31, and Clank's there is 63. 34. I'm sorry. So about 30 seconds difference between the two cars. Now, can you make that up on track? I think it probably depends on whether Cameron Dance plans on taking tyres on his second stop or not.
Yeah, and I think you'd be mad to forego tyres on the second stop as well, because, although those tyres are effectively made out of concrete on those cars, they will fall off after a while. Checking back in with the GT1s, meanwhile, the gap between Burns and Neck coming up to 27 seconds now. Neck is in no trouble at all there for the lead. He's taken pole position and has not looked back. It's been a pretty fantastic drive from the Victorian flag marshalling team machine, but can't take anything away from Dwayne Burns and Shane Bowen. They've worked themselves very nicely into those second and third positions, and Burns is keeping it nice and consistent there. He's not overdriving the car. He's not making any mistakes from what I've seen. But Blake Neck just supreme up the front in his Corvette. And the Corvette's in a bit of a minority in this field.
Speaking of mistakes, Robert Northway lucky to get away with one he just made at Indianapolis Complex.
Oh yeah, I just saw that myself. We'll grab that on the Virtual Racing School replay. Looked like a little bit of oversteer there through the left-hander and bucked the car sideways. That's the issue with Indianapolis. You come in so fast, and in the prototype, you're basically flat out through the left-hander, the right-hander. And once you get on the brakes, really unsettles the rear end because you're just coming out of turning the wheel. You got to be very careful with how you apply the brakes there. Oh, Thomas Hins, just getting away with that. Nearly going into one of the MFR Porsches there. That is Dino Lessie. Yeah. Something that you will see with these Porsche Cup cars. They have the engine hanging out past the rear axle, so once the rear end gets away from you, it's very difficult to recover. It swings like a pendulum on the direction change.
That gap at the top has swung like a pendulum as well. 4 seconds almost. O'Leary took out a Cameron Dance's advantage in the previous lap. 4:07.3 for Dance. Sorry, I'm not used to these sorts of lap times. And a 4:03.6 for O'Leary. 3.6 seconds quicker.
Looks like Cameron Dance had an off at the Mulsanne corner on the last lap. He took a trip through the gravel trap, so that's the reason why that gap has come down like it has. We want to minimize those mistakes.
Another one of those mistakes and he'll lose the lead to O'Leary. Again, it was a mistake that cost him initially, wasn't it? Harold Stadler back in third. Quite a long way away, though. He'll be disappointed with how this one's panning out at the moment as we're just past the halfway mark. He's about 6 seconds off Cameron Dance, and he was right with him at the start. Made his own mistake, fell back, and has not been able to claw it back ever since then. As we look further afield, or further out, depending on which way you want to go, behind them on the track, but ahead of them on the leaderboard, this is GT1. This is on board with Alexander Sheridan, and just have a listen to this race for a little while. This is the Aston Martin GT1 trying to chase down Shane Bowen. Corvette, Chris. It's a Corvette.
It is. I thought about just interjecting there, but I thought you're going to a commentary-less onboard. I'll just let it slide. But yeah, that big throaty rumble of the Chevrolet V8. It's a shame that we don't have that sound in sports car racing anymore, and I think the same can be said for that screaming V12 we can hear on Shane Bowen's Aston Martin as well. The era of big engines is well and truly over in sports car racing. Sheridan's really starting to creep up onto the back of Bowen now. Sheridan's made a couple of mistakes in this race so far, but it looks like Bowen's making some mistakes of his own, which is allowing the kinetic Corvette to jump up to the back of him. And
there you go.
That is the move.
If you pop over to the YouTube chat, you can indulge Jay's boredom, because Jay just presses buttons. It's very hard to get Jay excited by anything. And vote on which of the GT1s sounds the best. The Aston Martin or the Corvette, and don't get them confused like I did. But this race has plenty of excitement in it because there is a lot of intrigue right now, and I think Thomas Hinz is the one to watch. I reckon he is probably maybe the favourite at this point to steal this one away from Andrews and Stockton, who's only falling further afield after that mistake. He's now 5.7 seconds adrift of Matt Andrews.
Yeah, Stockton was very strong at the start of the race, but he's just not been able to capitalise ever since the pit stop. And Hinz, a little bit of a wiggle on the run into Indianapolis. He's still managing to extract some supreme times out of that HPD ARX01C. And Hinz, of course, the pole sitter, so you would think he was the favourite to win from the start. But, of course, he made that mistake on lap 1, which really set him back. So he's been battling his way back to the lead all this time. Some nice clean lines through the Porsche curves as well for Thomas Hinz. Matt Andrews has been missing a couple of apexes here and there, but he hits the apex nicely through the left-hander. Very crucial that you get that corner right, it being off camber and just before another flat-out section before they come up to the chicanes to end the lap. Very harsh curves at the forward chicane to end the lap here at Le Mans.
A lot of sausages, isn't it, over there at the chicane?
Oh yes. Proper French andouille sausage there at the final corner of Le Mans. Lap time comparison between Andrews and Hinz. It was a 35.4 for Matt Andrews and a 34.3 for Thomas Hinz. So he is really on a charge right now.
Hinz, absolutely flying. He's in perfect range. We're going to monster tow down the Mulsanne straight. Now he's met with a proposition. Does he sit and save fuel, or does he keep going and blaze on by and try to open up a gap on the racetrack? He didn't quite get close enough to make a move at the first chicane, but Andrews drove it in slightly deeper, and that's going to hurt his exit, and it allows Hinz not just the benefit of a tow again, but a good drive off. So a double dip of an advantage for Hinz. He pulls out, he's given the inside, and this will be a change of lead. Our pole sitter, Thomas Hinz, after a bad start to the race, is back to the front. Fight back is complete.
That it is. And I wouldn't be surprised if Hinz tries his best to extend that gap now. Try and give himself a bit more of a cushion before the final round of pit stops. But Andrews is keeping within the draft very nicely here. It'd be a good opportunity here for Andrews to save some fuel of his own. Try and decrease that pit stop time when they're next in the lane. A little bit more traffic up ahead for them as well. Daniel Stevens just making his way past Dean Moll there. So we check back in at the start-finish line. That is Cameron Dance making his way across to start his 20th lap of this race. He's got Gavin Barber just behind him in the HPDs, and there is Thomas O'Leary, who has fallen off the back of Dance a little bit more again. So Dance has recovered well from that mistake he made a couple of laps ago.
You know who didn't recover at all? Jack Stiles. He is retired one. After that crash, just where O'Leary was going by, he never got back out on the racetrack, it seems. He's 10 laps down now and out of this race. So that's a shame for him after starting second in class. Blake Knapp, as a result, GT1 has got himself What is the gap between them? There we go. 35 seconds thereabouts.
Last time we looked at it, it was coming up to 27, 28 seconds. So he's taken.
You should see the gap to third.
Yeah, goodness me. Alexander Sheridan, well, he's made his way past Shane Bowen now. We saw them make that pass, make that switch of positions between them some time ago. Sheridan, a further 39 seconds behind Dwayne Burns there. So
Yeah,
Shane Bowen...
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say he'll try his best here to stay in the draft of Sheridan, try and work his way back onto the podium.
Indeed he will. I was going to say that plus 33, plus 39 at the bottom right, that's not plus 33 to the leader, plus 39 to the leader. That's plus 33 to the next car, plus 39 to the next car. They are strung apart massively right now in GT1. The HPDs, though, are really putting up a fight. Pierre Cousin seems to be constantly in the action. But this time he's got Phil Otto pressuring him. Phil Otto is down from where he started. He fell backwards early on, but he's been on the pace in recent laps and is now on the back of Cousin. About 1.5 seconds quicker than him on the previous tour around Le Mans. Might be able to get by up at turn 1. Seems like the most reasonable next opportunity, otherwise it'll be a long wait until the Mulsanne. Through here, there's just no opportunity. It's too high speed.
Yeah, the tyres are already working incredibly hard to get the car around those turns. And you've also got to deal with a slight bit of aero push as well with I mean, there's nowhere near as much dirty air, as they call it, with you know, the car in front disturbing the air and messing up the flow over the aerodynamic surfaces. That's not as much of a problem in these sports cars because they produce the majority of their downforce through the floor of the car, but there is still a slight washout effect when you're behind another car through high-speed corners. So, oh no, that's Phil Otto there making a mistake. Just pinched the rears coming into the Dunlop chicane and sent around. So Pierre Cousin is safe once again. Not safe, meanwhile, is Thomas Hinz, because Matt Andrews is continuing to really shadow him here, keep the gap within half a second. Just staying in the draft, taking advantage down the straights, doing exactly what he needs to do to keep himself in the fight.
You see that sun as they went through?
Oh yeah.
Just seeing how a sunset might fall for this field. It's currently 9:15 in Sim. We've got an hour still left to run. It's June 12th. In the Sim date, which means it's summer over there. So sun will set very late, but it's 10 p.m. still before sunset. Or are we going to be racing into the dark?
That's the big question. I think it might just be dusk when we get the finish. And the sun isn't a huge problem for the line of sight of drivers through most of the circuit. It really only becomes a problem down the straight between Mulsanne and Indianapolis, and then on that little stretch between Indianapolis and Arnage is the only parts of the circuit where you're traveling to the west. Everywhere else, the sun's either behind you or to the side. It does make for some very nice visuals, though, as we watch the cars make their way around the circuit here in the sunset conditions.
And just looked up. Top June. Hey, KFC! Just showing off where the KFC is there at Le Mans. Important to note for people like me. For future reference. now. Just on the right there. As you come out of Tetra Rouge. There it is.
There's the Colonel. Stop by for a quick bite to eat after the checkered flag, why don't you?
If I was going to retire, if I was racing, I was going to retire from the race. I know exactly where I'd want to have that happen.
Engine blown out of Mulsanne, Tetra Rouge, no problem. Just jump over the fence, get some fried chicken, and you're happy again.
Oh no! Anyway. So, this year, sunset occurred at 9:59 p.m. at Le Mans. So, that is before we finish this race. That's in approximately 40 minutes. We've got 58 minutes left. So we could have about 20 minutes or so after sunset here, which will give us some interesting scenes of dusk and a little bit of darkness to conclude the evening.
Mr. Sheridan in the lane. Once again there from 4th place in GT1. Shane Bowen would have made his way back past him there. Bowen was behind him just before that point. So Sheridan, I think, with a little bit of an offset strategy there compared to his fellow competitors in the GT1 class, and the HPD lead's still as hotly contested as ever. Thomas Hinz has gained a little bit of time there on Matt Andrews, but Matt is still within draft range down the straights, so Hinz won't quite be able to get away yet. Jake Manhire briefly joins Alexander Sheridan in the pits. "35 seconds in the box there for Alexander Sheridan, which is pretty much what we'd expect. I'm looking at the GT1 stock times, and they run the gamut from 33 to about 37 seconds. And a bit of a lock-up there for Matt Andrews as he brings the Fitzstye number 47 into the lane. Thomas Hinz, of course, with that mammoth first stint, was able to gain a couple of laps on fuel over everyone else, so you wouldn't expect him in the lane yet. Oh no, that's a problem there for Gavin Barber. I don't know if he was trying to enter the pits at that point. I don't suspect he was. But still, that's not the greatest of places to have an off.
No, it's not. Close proximity to the fence. Not much knowledge coming into the corner for cars through the chicane. But luckily there was no one around him, and he did keep it out of the fence. So he keeps on going. As I'm just watching Andrews in the pit lane at the moment. Mitchell Bales with him. Hinz went an extra lap, as probably expected, based off his previous stint. 30 seconds to the dot for Andrews there. Stockton went an extra lap as well. Adrian Steffen comes in. So, two of the top 5 are able to stretch their stint. As Blake Neck goes by in the GT1 lead. Currently first, a high of first and a low of first. It's been pretty mundane, this race so far, for Blake Neck, but that is not always a bad thing, and it's certainly not a bad thing today. Out at the front of this one by 30 plus seconds in his class. Bales, a 45-second stop. So that's 15 seconds slower than what Matt Andrews did. And that's because he's taken tyres. Wonder how that will play out over the next 55 minutes.
Yes. I'd be interested to know what Matt Andrews' first pit stop time was. See if he took tyres then. But I think as the track cools down in these dust conditions, you can really go a lot longer on the tyres. HPDs can triple stint the tyres in the night conditions. So Andrews is trying his best here to keep himself in the fight, albeit with slightly more worn tyres. Cameron Dance in the Porsche Cup lead. Jake Fox in the Kinetic Corvette just made his way past him, and that's a bit of lap traffic in the form of Sean Rees. He's currently running in 31st overall. And Dwayne Burns bringing the Avatar Aston Martin into the lane.
We're not going to see Dance or O'Leary for a long time, are we?
Oh no.
Lap 32 most likely for them. And that will probably get them to the end. And there's not going to be a need for a splash and dash. They've still got 10 laps.
Yeah, they've played that fuel-saving game pretty spot on, have our top two. So it'll just be a straight-up two-stopper for them. Gaining a lot of time on the rest of the field.
What about Andrews? He's already made a stop, I know that. So he's done 2 stops. Has he made it 55 minutes between the start, stop 1 and stop 2?
He has not.
So he's going to have to pit again. Has Thomas Hinds? Is this strategy for Hinds playing out for us 2-stop for him? Is he making it more than 55 minutes between stints, between stops? Stockton isn't. He's coming in. So it looks like he might have to pit a 3rd time in this one. How long since his last stop? We have to try and find out. He pitted 13 laps, which is, I don't know, that equates to in time. 3-minute 40-second lap time, thereabouts. But it's not as much as Hinty can do. Hinty's doing a great job in fuel, isn't he?
Oh yeah.
His last stop was a lap later than Stockton. Flashing red lights. What does that mean, I wonder?
I think that's tyre pressure numbers that, from our spectators' perspective, we cannot see in sim. We do get readouts for the revs and for the gears, but not for stuff like tyre pressures.
What do you think the reasoning is about? I think some of the high-level teams might employ people to go and spectate other people's cars and find out what tyre pressures they're running and things like that.
Well, I mean, it's certainly not impossible to do in real life, is it? You can check the onboard feeds for certain cars, and you can see what pressures they're running. So, yeah, I think it would be very good, you know, even from a broadcast perspective, just to be able to see the tyre pressure readouts there.
3.1 seconds between Dance and O'Leary. So after that horrid lap for Dance, he's done a pretty good job at keeping himself at an arm's length away from Thomas O'Leary, who's got himself a nice, clean Cup car now. Those blue lights almost permanently illuminated at the side of the track, as there's almost always someone being overtaken by a faster class car somewhere around this racetrack. Up the inside goes one of the HVDs in the background, and it should emerge first. Yep, there it is. That's the MF Racing of Mitchell Bales.
Gavin Barber.
Gavin Barber. And it was the 50-50 guess, wasn't it?
Yeah, Barber, who we saw have that spin at the final chicane a couple of laps back. Thomas Hinds still keeping it nice and easy here up at the front. This is where he knows he should be, having gotten that magnificent pole position time by half a second over every other competitor in his class. Coming up to a little bit of traffic here at the end of the lap. That's Dean Alessi, who's just going by. Had to compromise his exit from the Porsche curve slightly, but that's not going to harm him too much out there in the lead. He's going to go for the lane this time. He is indeed. So again, that is another 2 laps that he's got over everyone else.
I still don't think he can make it.
It's going to be borderline.
I just did some really high quality calculations of 3.3 times 14, and that equals 46, and we have 50 minutes left. 3.3 being, so yeah, that'd be, 2 laps short.
Right. And I think over the next 50 minutes, it's going to be extremely difficult to save 2 laps worth of fuel. So that is a splash and dash for Hinz at the end. But I think there's going to be a slightly longer stop for everyone else right at the end.
They could save 2 laps at Sakuma, isn't it?
Oh, yeah.
2 laps at Le Mans. Just don't even try it.
Spending so much time on full throttle around here. So Matt Andrews just entering the final chicanes here as Hinz exits the pits. Quite the lead there for Thomas Hinz. There is Matt Andrews coming out of the final corner as we see Porsche's come into the lane, and 22.3 seconds for Thomas Hinz. That is the fastest stop we've seen in the HPD class all race. And obviously not taking tyres, as you probably expect.
Did he have fuel in the tank as well, still? How has he found... Or maybe he's put less fuel in the tank and he's going to have a longer splash and dash before the end. Interesting. Because he pulls 8 seconds on Matt Andrews as a result of that, as Stockton comes back in straight away. So Stockton's electing to do his 3rd stop straight away here. Now, the risk of that is you might get your calculation wrong.
Yeah, very risky there. But I think also he does have damage on the left-hand side of his car. So he's taken the spare car there. I don't think that stop was planned. That said, he is bringing it up onto the jacks to take tyres. I'm going to check back and see what happened to Damon Stockton, because he's obviously had a reasonable off there. Oh, I've just seen it. It was at Indianapolis. And it's the same thing.
He had it saved. He didn't have it, and then along came Scott Corbin. Didn't know anything about it.
Yep, blind corner there at Indianapolis. We'll check the virtual racing school replay to see how it all went down. And poor Damon Stockton, he went airborne coming out of Indianapolis when that hit happened. So here he is, gets a little bit crossed up over the curb, just turned in a bit too early and got it spun, and in comes Scott Corbin, and pirouetting through the air is Damon Stockton. It's a big shame there for Damon, who was the early leader of this race. On board from Scott Corbin, we'll be able to get a bit of perspective here. As you come into Indianapolis, he has no idea what's going on here. He's already committed to the track out, and right there is the hit.
So they both come to pit lane to get repairs. They'll both top up on fuel, but I don't think they've run enough of the tank down to get enough fuel back in the car. So they're probably up to pit again. Disastrous for both of those drivers, as Manhire and JM Thomas continue a fight that has been going for over an hour now in GT1 for P6 in class. 18th overall. Manhire currently leading this one as Hinz comes up to lap them.
Splits the two of them through the Porsche curves, and then with the superior downforce and lightness of the HPD, just makes his way around the outside, no problem, around the right-hander there. But Manhire and Thomas, they've been keeping each other very honest throughout this entire race. There have been a couple of mistakes from JM Thomas's end, and a couple from Manhire as well, but they have stayed together and continued fighting for that final position in the top 5. Who's going to come out on top at the very end, we still have yet to find out.
Here in dance, O'Leary 2.8 seconds between them. That was Andrews just going by them. Andrews is 11.2 seconds, by the way, off Hinz. So they're on lap 25, these two Porsches. Expect them in about 7 laps or 6 laps, and then they'll comfortably make it to the end, you would think. Harold Stadler, 3rd in class, is all by himself. He's miles off the back of O'Leary and miles ahead of Brad Clenk. who in turn is, oh my word, a long way ahead of Dean Mole.
Stadler is just pitted as well, just for context. So taking his second stop of the race. As we see Robert Northway and Eric Antilli there in the pit lane. And Antilli taking, we don't know if he's taking tyres just yet. These guys have only just entered the box and they've done it at pretty much the same time. So it's going to be a close battle between these two guys, which will be for third overall at the end of it. Antilli is away.
Well, I think Antilli won that one.
Yep, he didn't take tyres. Robert Northway has. So, bit of fresh rubber there for Northway.
I don't think it's worth it with only 44 minutes left. He's giving up 30 seconds. I don't think we can catch that back up with the time remaining. Only just getting back up off pit road speed now. As we see a replay of J.M. Thomas getting overtaken by Manhire.
Yeah, he'd made his way past Manhire at one point, but has had to let him back by. I'm not too sure if that was a slowdown or what, but didn't look like slowdown material, the line that he took through the first Mulsanne chicane. But Manhire has really drawn out the gap now. Getting a little whisper of a draft here off the HPD of Matt Andrews, who's still running second there behind Thomas Hinz, but the gap has really extended. It's 12.2 between our HPD leaders at the moment. It's a big puff of smoke through Indianapolis.
Northway's fresh tyres are apparently also cold because he had a slide immediately out of the pit lane. So, yeah, I don't see him catching until he... Remember, Stockton probably would have been in that third spot, but with that contact with Corbin after his spin, they're both short-handed in terms of fuel and track position, so they've dug themselves a hole.
It's a fight for position between the two of them at the moment. They are close for fourth place. Of course, they have Harold Stadler there splitting them at the moment. As the track keeps getting darker and darker, the sun is slipping below the horizon, and we should be entering proper dusk conditions in about 10 minutes' time. We'll see the lights come on at the start-finish complex. And the sun just poking through those trees down the straight. Slight bit of distraction there for Damon Stockton, but keeping himself going.
There's not many lights anywhere else other than the start-finish complex. It can get pretty dark pretty quickly through the trees that line the back of the Le Mans circuit. It can mask the light from the sun pretty well. So, yeah, that darkness can creep up on you. In fact, it looks pretty dark up at turns 1 and 2, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah. Waiting for the headlights to come on there in the Porsche Cup class.
They're already on the HPDs and the GT1s.
And of course, those headlights complying with the International Sports Car Racing regulations for prototypes. The headlights are white for the GT1s. The headlights are yellow. That's for the purposes of being able to tell the cars apart at night when you can't really tell them apart by body shape. Hinz is just in hot lap mode at the moment, it seems. He's really extending that lead further with Matt Andrews now. Is that 25 seconds back? It looks like there might have been a mistake there for Matt.
Well, he was 12.5 seconds back at the start of the lap. So
What
a
happened
mistake,
here?
indeed. No damage to the car. Potentially just a spin by himself. Was it through Tetra Rouge?
Oh, on
Grabbed
entry.
the grass on the entry and offloaded the car quite dramatically in a cloud of smoke.
Had a bit of trouble getting it pointed the right way again as well. On board with him. This is a very easy place to make a mistake. You're trying to line up the entry to this fast corner, but yeah, you just grab a little bit too much grass and the car just snaps. Something you've got to be very careful of at that section of the circuit, and fortunately there were no other cars around at the time. Of course, we had a couple of GT1s there. That's Manhire and Thomas just coming up behind him, but they were able to avoid a big incident there with him, and they're actually together again. 0.3 of a second between the Corvette and the Aston Martin.
Fighting like a married couple, these two. Cannot get away from each other. Manhire started this one from 20th. He's up 3 spots. Thomas started from 19th. He's only up 1. In fact, that's how they were at the start of the lap. They still are, man. Just getting myself confused, looking between different timings sheets. Corbin and Stockton, 4th and 5th.
Oh.
Stockton tucks back in very quickly, goes for the dive with the left-hander. They make contact and Corbin's escorted wide into the gravel.
And evidently not very happy with that, if that headlight flash is anything to go by. Stockton did not want to give up that position. Sent it up the inside at Indianapolis and full-on gave Corbin the elbow, which of course is slightly exacerbated with the latency. Of course, Corbin is racing from America.
Yeah, it's certainly contact though.
Oh yeah. There was going to be contact whichever way you went about it, but
A pretty daring move from Stockton, especially given that Corbin has had his race greatly affected by Stockton's own mistake earlier on.
yes, I would agree with that assessment. Virtual Racing School replay of Thomas Hinz here, just making his way past some GT3 Cup traffic, and something's happened to him. He's lost 20 seconds, and we're about to see the reason for that. Took too much curb on the inside of
Wait,
Tetra Rouge and contact with the wall! Oh no! So
Oh,
Thomas
yeah.
Hinz... Oh yeah, if you're Matt Andrews, but man, Thomas Hinz, he'll be
He's got
kicking
away with
himself
it.
for that one. Yeah, he has, but he will still have a little bit of damage to the rear, which might affect his straight line speed.
Don't think he does. I think he's really got away with it.
Wow. If so, that's very lucky.
He hit the tyres before the arm cut, which I think dissipated a lot of the energy. So about 5 seconds between Hinz and Andrews. It was side by side, then it was 1 second, then it was 8, quickly out to 12, then 20, and 25, now back to 5. That sun has almost dipped behind the trees. Headlights casting an evident glow now on the racetrack as well. 16 minutes from sunset time. 35 minutes from checkered flag. At the end of whatever lap they'll be on at the time. So it could be up to about 20 minutes away from the... Could be up to about 38, 39 minutes away from the checkered flag, depending on where they are when that 0 falls on the timer. As Hinz weaves his way by Johnny Bell and Shane Bowen.
I can see a little bit of damage to Hinz's left front. I don't think that's affecting him too much. It might just be visual damage. Still, it certainly can't help your confidence.
unfocused minds and tired eyes at the end of almost 2.4 hours as Hinz comes in, decides now is the time for his splash and his dash and a precautionary spare car, perhaps.
Looking again at Cameron Dance and Thomas O'Leary. O'Leary still a bit of a thorn in Dance's side here. If there's one mistake here from the leader, then O'Leary's going to be right there to take advantage.
Closing in. It was 3.8 seconds. Remember the first time we first looked at that graphic, it's now 2.2. O'Leary's slowly working away at Dance, and I wonder if that little damage to the front right of Cameron's car is just affecting him ever so slightly. I mentioned he probably picked it up on a curb somewhere. It might just be having a slight aero effect down the straights. Maybe even giving him some understeer through some of the corners. Through some of the right-handers, it could be giving him a bucket load of understeer. Being on that right-hand front corner. O'Leary's car is squeaky clean after getting a spare car at his last stop. They've still got to make one more stop, though, those two guys. It'll be in 4 laps' time, and I dare say it won't be a complete stop for them either. They'll only have to take about half a tank of fuel. So their pit stop times will be very curious as Stockton works his way by them both.
Yeah, Scott Corbin, who was battling there with Damon Stockton, has elected to come into the pits, and Thomas Hinz has indeed taken that precautionary spare car with that pit stop. He's come out just behind Mitchell Bales here. Bales up into second on track, but Hinz will probably waste no time in getting past him, and Hinz obviously did not take tyres on that stop either. Certainly not worth it at this stage of the race, because tyres take 15 seconds to get put on the car, and it's done separately to fuel. So Thomas Hinz right here driving with slightly worn rubber, but it won't be as much of a problem now with the cooler track conditions. The track is down to 27 degrees, which is not the coolest of tracks, but still probably cooler than it was at the start.
What happened to Corbin? Because we saw a little bit of contact. He's come into the lane and he's retired from the race.
Oh. He already used his spare car, we're hearing from our director, so the damage that he picked up from that contact with Damon Stockton might have been enough to give him a meatball. Well, I can't really see much in the way of visual damage to his car. When he came into the pits, I saw him come up onto the jacks, and yeah, he just decided to call it quits.
Clarify the meatball for us, Reese.
Meatball is the black flag with a red or orange circle on it, which signifies that a car has too much damage to continue going around the circuit and it must come in for repairs. They call it a meatball because it looks like a meatball. Yes, and it is issued by iRacing, as you say. It's automatic.
I'll tell you what, it's the irony of things, because you can get one and feel absolutely fine sometimes. But, yeah. It does serve its purpose. It keeps some pretty horrendous looking cars off the racetrack. You've generally got 3 laps to come in and do those repairs before iRacing will disqualify you from the server in an effort to prevent severely damaged and off-pace cars off the road. Speaking of which, 2 cars off the road there. 2 GT1 cars, Jonathan Bain, and into the fence with lingering damage from the contact beforehand, I would say, Connor Brown.
Those two were battling for last position in GT1 before that happened, and it looks like it was straight up contact between them. Brown sent it up the inside of Bain at the S's, and then Bain, his rear end got away from him and he went into the side of Brown. We're about to see it. Connor, obviously feeling rather pacey here, making time up on Jonathan Bain. That was a late dive there coming into the Dunlop chicane. That compromised Bain's exit. And
right.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, you'll see down here, they come up to the S's, and Brown sends it up the inside again, and round about here, Jonathan Bean's rear end gets away from him and gets sent into the side, so Brown kept it out of the wall.
Until.
So
that contact, it came right on the wheel.
Oh, yeah.
It came right on the rear wheel of Connor Brown, and it's knocked it out of alignment, I suspect. You could see there his steering was right hand down, and as soon as he jumped on the brakes, the car veered to the left and into the Armco, and he has to tow back to the pits.
Many minutes there for Connor Brown spent getting that tow done. Gap between Dance and O'Leary has decreased further, 1.2 seconds between the two of them here at the lead of the Porsche Cup class. So again, yeah, it looks like Cameron Dance is starting to lose pace. And you know what, Ryan? I don't think it might be entirely due to the damage, maybe the tyres. Because remember, Dance didn't take tyres, and I don't think O'Leary did either, but maybe Thomas has been taking better care of his.
Well, yeah, you're right. We didn't see them take it, did we? The tyres, that is, in their first stop. And I severely doubt they're going to take them on this stop, given it's only going to be half a tank of fuel. They're taken separately, but you're going to shorten your stop with only half a tank of fuel while making a long stop by then adding tyres to it for a 25-minute sprint to the end. And they're not under pressure from anyone else. Oh, Sheridan is in the fence.
Oh,
Third place in GT1. It looks like he's been in the fence.
Yeah, that's at Indianapolis. Virtual Racing School replay of that one. And yeah, it looks like he did make it into the fence. And that'll be a very frustrating spin too, which you're about to see. Yeah, he enters Indianapolis okay. Seemed like he was actually taking it easy through the left-hander, but he took too much curb, and the rear end got away from him. Front end goes into the wall. And he might have had trouble actually getting it turned around too, because there's some secondary contact there. Big shame there.
I was going to say, there's no point taking tyres because they're not under pressure from anyone that did take tyres earlier on either. They're lapping quicker than Stadler, Clank, Bell. So, what's the point? They'll stay out there on old tyres. So, certainly how they've saved them is going to be a factor as Dance carries the right front lockup all the way through to the apex. He's hurt his tyres, I think, for sure. I think you're on the money there. That lockup was a good demonstration, I think.
Yeah, Dance really struggling now to slow that thing down. They got Robert Northway here to ruin the party too, and that's a bit of a draft there that Mr. O'Leary's going to be picking up from the prototype. Dance obviously gets it for the shortest of moments on the run up to Indianapolis. But the gap continues to decrease between these two. O'Leary is right on it here with a fresher car than Dance and maybe fresher tyres too.
Where is Manhire? I just saw JM Thomas behind them exit quite aggressively out of the corner. There's Manhire.
He's far behind. Something's gone wrong for him. I'm checking back to see. He pitted on the last lap, so there's going to be a couple of strategy foibles to work out between the two of them there. Could probably expect JM Thomas to make his way into the lane soon and equalise that battle out.
Dance just clobbered the curb through the Porsche curves. He's struggling. And he's in. And O'Leary stays out. So they alternate their strategy here. Dance might have just got a slowdown then on pit entry. If he did... It seemed like he took a whole lot of the chicane.
Yeah, it's a frustrating pit entry because you have to navigate a chicane on the way in, but
He didn't navigate it.
No, he didn't. You see he went right over the curb and into the gravel there. I think he would have picked up an off-track from that at least, but I don't know about a slowdown. I can't say that I've ever made an entry like that in my time sim racing.
Because you're a good racer that actually takes the track.
Indeed, I am. Thank you
he's
very
taking
much.
tyres.
Oh. Okay. So this changes things quite a bit in the battle for the lead.
Dean Mole comes in as well behind. Takes a spare car. Connor Brown and GT1 is still getting a toe. Excuse me, sorry.
A toe?
A shoe. And Jake Fox dives into the lane as well. Dance leaves the lane with a 45-second stop. Now, if O'Leary does not take tyres, this would be really interesting to the end.
Yeah, how long will O'Leary be able to make those tyres last?
Because
He's made them last pretty well.
remember, a full tank of fuel was 30 seconds, and that's a 45-second stop. So he's taken half a tank of fuel. So he's plus 30 seconds he's got to make up if O'Leary doesn't take some fresh rubber. It's a lot in 23 minutes.
As Cameron Dance just thrown the race away in the Porsche Cup class. Dean Moll has been in the pits for quite some time here, going over a minute. Looks like he might be out of the car, actually. So that might be a retirement there for Dean Moll. Yeah, you can clearly see the Porsche logo on the driver's seat. So Dean Moll has called it quits. That's
interesting,
shame.
because he came in and took the spare car.
Yeah.
I wonder if something else going on for him. Oh, hello. That's J.M. Thomas.
It is indeed.
Or Manhire.
Oh, it's J.M. Thomas there, and he's had a bit of trouble getting it turned around. Oh, Daniel Stevens, ever the seasoned competitor, taking a good amount of avoiding action there on the exit of Mulsanne. Man, JM, he had a real tough time getting that car turned around. Here's the view from Stevens on board, tips it in, and oh no, which way do I go? Whoops, there we go.
2 out of
Keeps
10 for that re-entry, buddy.
I think a 10 out of 10 for that avoiding action from Daniel Stevens, especially this long into a 2.4 hour race. To keep those reaction times up like that really takes some steely determination.
Something else. You said, has Dance just thrown away the race? I think he was screwed either way, because we saw how much O'Leary was catching him, and Dance was really just looking un-Dance-like on that in-lap. He was locking up the tyre everywhere. He was offline, bouncing off curbs, looking a bit average. I don't think he was going to be able to hold on if he stayed out on old tyres for the final stint anyway, so I think he had to take tyres, otherwise he wasn't going to win it, so...
I mean, he's not under any threat for second, is he? These two are just so far ahead of everyone else. In comes O'Leary, meanwhile, into the pits, and we'll see if he elects to take tyres as well.
I wouldn't if I was him.
Try and hold on to that lead.
So the Kinetic Racing car comes in. Kinetic versus Texent Spitfire, O'Leary and Dance dueling it out in Porsche Cup at Le Mans. 2.4 hours, but it's going to get decided in the final 20 minutes between these two drivers. 1 minute from sunset, by the way. Headlights very much effective now, as the sky is tinted orange.
No tyres.
Here we go. It's going to be all on Dance to make up a bucket load of time. 30 seconds he's going to have to make up. I don't think it's possible, but it is Cameron Dance.
Yes, we've certainly seen him do the impossible in the past. But barring a mistake from O'Leary on cold tyres, at least, you know, cooler having been in the lane, I really don't see Dance making up this gap. Especially if he keeps doing that.
Yeah. .9 seconds. That's the gap. 20 minutes to go. Meanwhile, up in the HPDs, Matt Andrews and Thomas Hinds have 40 seconds separating them. And Hinds has been back in the lane, hasn't he? Has Andrews?
Yeah. No, not yet. Andrews on 2 stops. Everyone else in the HPD class, in the top 4 at least, on 3 stops. So...
yeah, Hinds will comfortably retake the race lead. Because the pit stop time is... they're probably, what, 15 seconds stationary? And then 25 seconds, 30 seconds to transit?
yeah, something like that. With the small amount of fuel they'd have to take for that final stint. Of course, that is assuming fuel only and no tyres.
That really would be a pointless mission, I think.
Yeah.
In HPD, taking tyres with 15 minutes left.
Been a pretty
GT1.
lonely race there for Blake Neck, hasn't it?
You bet. He has not been challenged at all. Even back in qualifying, no one got near him. What did he have pole by? It was 1.6 seconds over Jack Styles. He had pole in qualifying. And now in the race, he's leading by a whopping margin that stands in excess of 30 seconds. The gap is 52 seconds.
There is Dwayne Burns, who, you know, you can't take anything away from, really. Yeah, he is a long way behind Blake Neck, but he's been able to hold on to that second place and make virtually no mistakes on the way through. And replay here for Matt Andrews. I think, I don't know, Adrian Stefan we're taking a look at. Getting my liveries confused again. Typical Reese Gardner moment, but Adrian Stefan, who was battling for the lead with Damon Stockton at the start, making a mistake there on the entry into the chicanes. The rear just getting away from him under brakes.
Yeah, it's certainly that phase in the race where we're seeing lots of mistakes. 3 seconds the gap has come down by, but it's been 3 minutes, hasn't it? So what? It's about a second a minute between these two?
Yep.
Which leaves him 10 minutes shy.
Yes, but again, we have to remember that O'Leary is on older tyres, so a bit more of a chance for him making a mistake, and he can easily drop 10 seconds just like that.
Daniel Stevens off the road at turn there.
Turn there. I love it. Looks
When in
like,
doubt, point it out.
indeed. I think turn 6 or 7 through the S's. The rear just got away from him through the left-hander, and whew, that HPD was indeed lucky. It looked like one of the Gentlemen's Sim Racing Club cars there. That's another one of those corners where you certainly don't want to be offline.
Yeah, it's deceptively annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, you can carry a huge amount of speed through those S's, and the left-hander is slightly banked, but yeah, once you get offline, those marbles can very easily make your rear end come a cropper. The tyres complain, and you are just around.
So, Reese?
I was just going to say, we're still waiting for Matt Andrews to come in for his final stop. Were you going to say something similar?
Pretty different.
Okay.
In terms of attrition for this race, Harold Stadler, 2, never took the start. Harold Stadler has multiplied for this race. Ilya Shamov retired pretty much instantaneously. Jack Styles, Jeremy Kingscott, Sean O'Hara, Dina Lesty have all retired. All but Jack Styles there being from Porsche Cup class. Dean Mole looks to be retired as well, we suspect. He's from Porsche Cup 2. And then Sean Rees is the last car still circulating, being 5 laps down. Connor Brown is the last GT1 still circulating, also 5 laps down. Scott Corbin is the only retirement from HPD. He's 4 laps down at the moment. And that's it. So really, not too many retirements for a 2.4-hour race, especially given most of them have come from the start.
Yeah, it's been a good rate of drivers keeping themselves in the fight here at Le Mans today. I think, barring those few mistakes we've seen from a certain few drivers, I think the racing has largely been very clean, especially up the top of Porsche Cup and up the top of HPD as well.
Keeping in the fight, Cameron Dance went purple last lap. Quickest Porsche lap of the race. 4:01 with 3:13. Last time by. Watch the gap. 24 seconds. It's 13 minutes left. Yeah, he really needs a mistake from earlier. It was a bold call. It was putting the race back in his hands, but at the same time, leaving himself with too much to do. We know Dance is not someone to leave an option on the table. We knew he was always going to try something to win this race, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like Dance is going to be good enough today.
And I think it might affect the overall championship battle slightly. Thomas Hinz is 15 points behind Cam Dance as we see Matt Andrews come for the lane. So we can expect Hinz to very easily retake the race lead of HPD. You get equal points for wins and positions in all 3 classes. So with Hinz, as it stands, taking maximum points for the win in HPD and Dance taking points for 2nd place in Porsche, that's going to narrow the championship battle down slightly. Hinz won't overtake Dance in the standings, but the gap will be a little bit tighter.
Yeah, it's going to be good to see that tighten up at the top, at the title fight. Andrews and Hinz have just switched around on the racetrack because Andrews just came out of pit lane, I believe. Yes, he did. There's not much of a gap between them. If Hinz makes a little mistake, similar to what O'Leary could make, but Andrews will over the back of him, but at the moment there's about probably 6 seconds, 7 seconds between them.
Oh, that's a mistake there from Damon Stockton, and that's going to allow Eric Antilli by. So Antilli now up into 4th place after starting in 9th. It's been a good fight back there from Eric. See what happened to Damon Stockton here through the final couple of chicanes. Bit of a lock-up, which would have set him on a bad trajectory for the final chicane and just dipping a wheel into the gravel on the exit of the corner. Oh, and he only just didn't manage to keep it out of the wall there, so a slight whack to the rear, but that shouldn't affect him too much. That also promotes Mitchell Bales up to 3rd.
Been a brilliant drive for Bales. Remember I touched at the start of the race on this being a comeback drive for him from his fractured ribs, hips, ribs, bones. Hang on, let me fact check.
I'm sure
hips.
You said it was hips earlier.
Yeah, 2 fractured hips, which he picked up earlier this year in a cycle training accident where he came face to face with a car and lost. And yeah, he's fought back brilliantly, returning to the major series today, toughing it out over 2.4 hours, and looks like he might be walking away with the podium, but it's not a certainty. Still got Antilli not too far behind him.
Adrian Stefan Pitts. I've just done a little calculation with Hins in the lead of HPD and Dance second in HPD. If they finish that way, the championship points gap at the top will be almost halved. It was 15 coming into this round. It will be 8 leaving it.
It was interesting because Dance chose the Porsche class as he believed it was his best shot of winning, because each class gives out full points, of course. Blake Neck will pick up full points. O'Leary, if he wins, will pick up full points. And Hins will pick up full points. So he thought that was his best way to maintain his title points advantage, but O'Leary has come along and said, I am here to disrupt your title fight.
Indeed, looking at the points table, actually, for a single class race, first place gets 50 points, second place gets 45, third 43 points, and so on and so forth. For a 3-class race like this one, first place gets 46 points, second gets 39, third gets 36. So, not quite full points on offer, but still a good portion. And,
as in per class.
Yes, per class, yes.
They're not penalised for running slower classes, is what I was trying to get at.
Yes. They all get the same points. Burns comes in for his final pit stop of the race. It revs up the engine to get going as Mr. Dance crosses the line here. Nearly 24 seconds back to his teammate Harold Stadler. 22
Equalised.
to O'Leary.
The fresh jar advantage has come and gone. It's pretty much equalised now between himself and O'Leary. Although, he did do another fastest lap of the race previous time around. I think O'Leary himself is just keeping his tyres alive perfectly. As the track temp goes down, that'll be aiding Dance in these purple laps. But, yeah, he's not as quicker than O'Leary than he was at the very start of this final stint. 7 minutes, 26 seconds remaining. What's the estimate on laps remaining then? Because it's all going to depend on where the leaders are when the clock hits 0.
Our director's saying 2.7 for Thomas Hins up at the front.
2 to go when we hit the line for Hinsey. There he is.
Just made his way past Pierre Cousin, who's holding on to 10th place in class and the last car on the lead lap. Gavin Barber is in 11th in HPD and a lap down. The lead of all cars on a lap down there. I've got to say, this drive from Thomas Hins has been pretty spectacular. Yes, he has made a couple of spectacular mistakes on the way, but to fight back to the lead, retake it, and manage to hold on to it like he has, especially with his fuel management, it's been nothing short of immense. And I got to say, that's the reason why I think he's one of the top competitors in this international division of the majors, along with Cameron Dance. He's been one of the few drivers out there to really keep Dance honest over the course of the entire season.
He's versatile, can hop in just about anything and be fast, much like Cameron Dance. And the HPD is showing off that ability as a couple more GT1s just dive in for their final literal splash of fuel it will be. Blake Neck, the leader, and Daniel Stevens also joins him. In and out, 8.1 seconds.
No dramas there for Blake Neck, as per usual. I mean, it really shows how well Blake's done, that we've barely focused on him at all in this race. He's had zero trouble out there at the front. Just held on to that lead, kept his eyes forward, never looked back. And the same will be true for Thomas Hinz at the moment. After taking that lead back and fighting with Matt Andrews, he's just set the fastest lap of the race in the HPD class, and the fastest lap overall, obviously. 3 minutes 33. That's the first time we've seen a lap below 3 minutes and 34 seconds.
They're all finding chunks of time as the sun dips away and the track temp dips lower. Blake Neck, just a couple of laps ago, did his fastest lap of the race as well. Just following Thomas Hinz now through the chicane. And we know, of course, Cameron Dance is laying down fastest lap after fastest lap, as turning around again as Damon Stockton. His race started so well and is going backwards almost as quickly as he finds himself facing backwards right here as he turned it into pit entry. Why was he coming to the pits?
Good question. I'm wondering if...
oh, that's right. He made his stop, but it was too early because he had damage. Dance just did another fastest lap, 4:01 flat.
Unfortunately, it looks like it's too little too late for Cameron Dance. Because O'Leary is just cruising at the moment out there in front, as are the leaders in all three of our classes.
You know the Majors Series tradition of races exploding on the final 25% of the race?
Yeah,
Quite happened today.
This is the exception that proves the rule, isn't it?
There's still time, says director and occasional prophet Jay. I wouldn't trust him on that one, though. I think our race leaders have settled themselves in. Just over 2 minutes on the clock. A lap left. Next time each of them hit the line. 1 minute, 10 seconds, and 6/10 for Dwayne Burns to catch up to try and pass Blake Neck for the lead in GT1. Don't quite think that's going to happen. 10 seconds for Hinz over Matt Andrews. A gap that has only grown since Hinz made his final stop a little bit later than everyone else. And Thomas O'Leary, the gap slowly shrinking, but slowly. And he still has about 20 seconds comfortably in hand over the fresh rubbered Cameron Dance. So, with 1 minute and 55 seconds on the clock, race, Hinz comes across the line to begin the final lap of the Majors Series International Region, Le Mans 2.4.
Indeed he does, and I mean, what more can you say about Hinz that we haven't already said? It's been a fantastic drive here from the number 52. He extended his fuel stints where it counted and was able to spend a bit more time on track trying to get back that lead that he lost at the start. There's only been a couple of blips here on what has largely been a supreme drive from second place in the championship, and he'll certainly welcome the maximum haul of points that he'll get from this class win. Got a few more bits of traffic to go in the form of J.M. Thomas and maybe Phil Otto just up ahead, but I don't think Hinz will catch up to his fellow HPD before the end of this lap. Otto and Mookie in 8th and 9th in HPD, just up ahead of him. And now Hinz can just relax a little bit more. He knows that he has done the work. He can afford to sit back a bit down these straights, and again you can see how the straight line speed is very similar between HPD and GT1, but comes in very hot into the braking zone. Well, the final times we'll see an on-board here for Thomas Hinz, and makes his way very sedately past J.M. Thomas on the run down to the Mulsanne corner. It's always a pleasure to watch any car around Le Mans, but me being a prototype fan, I always enjoy watching the prototypes, just how quickly they can take these right angle bends and sharp turns over these bumps and divots on these public roads that have seen racing action for coming on a century now. Such a beautiful, historic place, this Le Mans circuit. Through Indianapolis for the final time. Just as clean as he's always been. The slowest corner on the circuit up at Arnage. Minimum speed there of 82 kilometers per hour. And then he's only got the supremely fast Porsche curves to go. Just tip it in. Staying over 200 kilometers an hour through this entire section. Tightens up a little bit through this left-hander. Got to lift off slightly and then back on the brakes for this never-ending right-hand turn. Does he nail the off-camber left at Corvette? Looks like he nails it well enough to keep it going. And he's only got 4 turns to go after those kinks. The headlight flash is already on. Thomas Hinz will celebrate here. And well-deservedly as well. Over the curbs for the final time at the Ford chicane, and across the line he comes. Thomas Hinz, your winner of the International Majors 2.4 Hours of Le Mans. A fantastic drive, and Blake Neck just behind him, going to come across to take a truly dominant victory in GT1. He was never in danger for the lead of the race, showing his skill in his trusty Corvette. A supreme drive from Blake Neck, taking that win. And Thomas O'Leary a little bit further down the track here, just coming through Indianapolis. But Ryan, I reckon the key to this race for O'Leary was tyre management. He was able to keep the pace there, just not drive too hard, keep that good amount of rubber, good amount of pace in those tyres, and take a deserved victory.
Yeah, and I don't think O'Leary's put a foot wrong either. But I wouldn't attribute that to himself. Remember, we saw the slow car rejoin right in front of him. He had nowhere to go, picked up the damage. I think that is why he lost the lead of the race early on. And Cameron Giddens got the spare car. He got rejuvenated, found some energy, saved his tyres, and was able to run down Cameron Dance to the point where Dance felt the need to grab fresh rubber. O'Leary, not even a hint of being in danger at the end of this one, through the final 2 chicanes. It's been a fantastic performance from Thomas O'Leary. Couldn't get near him in qualifying, but in the race he was all over him. O'Leary is the one to beat. He wins the Carrera Cup, the Porsche Cup class, if you will, here at the Majors Le Mans 2.4.
So those are your unofficial results for HPD. Thomas Hinz taking the win by 13.8 seconds from Matt Andrews, and Mitchell Bales in his sim racing comeback after injury, getting on the podium. He can certainly be proud of himself there. So can Eric Antilli with a fight back up 5 positions to finish in 4th. Robert Northway started from the back in the HPD class, but recovers to finish 5th from 12th. Damon Stockton, well, he started incredibly well, but as the race wore on, the mistakes started to creep in, and he just continued having issues right towards the end. He'll have to settle for 6th. Adrian Stefan, too, another protagonist right at the start, but unfortunately, suffering issues, spins, crashes, and the like. He finishes in 7th. Julian Mookie comes home in 8th, beating Phil Otto, and Pierre Cousin rounding out the top 10, a lap down on our leader, Gavin Barber, rounding out the finishers in the HPD class with Scott Corbin, the sole retirement.
Blake Neck took home the GT1 victory in the Corvette from Dwayne Burns and Shane Bowen. Alexander Sheridan, Jake Manhire, J.M. Thomas, Daniel Stevens, Adam Cahill, and Jonathan Bain made up the top 20. And then they weren't the final GT1 cars, but then there were a few Porsches between them and the retirements in GT1, Chris.
Yes, indeed. Thomas O'Leary taking victory over Cameron Dance. Tyres were the key there. Dance taking fresh rubber in his final stop and working his tyres a bit too hard in the stint before that. Harold Stadler makes it 2 Fitstye cars on the podium, but they certainly would have liked to have been 1 and 2 as they qualified. Brad Klenk coming home in 4th place. Fairly anonymous drive for Brad Klenk, but that's what you want in an endurance race. He stayed out of trouble and takes home a strong 4th place. Johnny Bell finishes 5th with Sean Rees in 6th. You see the retirements there of Connor Brown and Jake Fox. I actually think that they were still on the track, but they had to suffer toes there. And you see Scott Corbin classified 10 laps down, the sole retirement in HPD. That was Dean Mole, Dean Alessi, Sean O'Hara, the final finishers there. Jamie Kingscott, Jack Stiles, Ilya Sharmov did not make it to the finish, and Harold Stadler's clone did not take to the start.
No, we did not. Pretty good race all up, I think. A lot of different variants and strategy, and in the end, I think that 2 of the races were run and won on strategy, weren't they?
Yeah, that they were indeed, and we're going to talk to the winner of one of those strategy battles. It's HPD winner and overall winner Thomas Hinz. Hinzy, big congratulations on your victory. It didn't quite come easy though with that mistake at the start.
Thanks, Reese. It was lack of practice probably showing. Usually I at least try and get a little bit of practice in, but just been hectic at work the last week, so I kind of jumped in pretty cold. But thankfully still the muscle memory is still sort of there, and got the lap in quali, and then I guess the default thing from driving this pre-new time model, where you just push too hard, because you used to always obviously have the grip instantly. I just did that, just went too hard and off it went. So it made it interesting, of course, coming back through, and then got back in to the lead, and then decided to stuff it again, coming into Mulsanne with a mistake that nearly cost me it, but thankfully was able to put in some good laps at the end to keep the lead. So more adventurous than I planned, but as they say, the end result's the key. So still got the win. That's the main thing. So pretty happy with that.
As you should be, and fuel definitely played its part. You were able to extend your first stint a bit further than everyone else did. So what was your thinking behind the strategy going into this one?
Well, really, I was wondering how long the tyres would last. I actually had no idea. I thought they should last the whole thing. I wasn't 100% sure, so I was sort of just going off when the stops were there, obviously having a look at the tyre wear and judging it off that. But when I saw the first tyre stop, I got a pretty good idea that I should have been able to go the whole way with them, and that ended up being the case. But I didn't think I wasn't particularly fuel saving the first one, because I was obviously trying to come through. But and I saw about sort of 4 or 5 laps to go. I was on the cusp of going an extra lap, so I sort of started saving a little bit there just to make sure I could make that extra lap, and I just did. And everyone else was worse, which was good. And I was like, oh, it's good, so that's giving me an advantage already. And then that sort of happened again with the second one. So it definitely helped. I've usually always been a bit better on fuel and tyres, just with the way I drive, I think. So that was definitely a helpful factor. That's sort of saving a bit at the end, I think, with that last mistake. So it definitely helped.
And the championship battle has certainly been helped by that victory for you. Cameron Dance coming home second in the Porsche Cup class. The gap between you and him at the front of the championship standings is now 8 points instead of 15. So certainly there's great potential there for the championship fight to continue.
Obviously saw Cam was in the Porsches, and early on I think he was leading, and thought, he'll probably, I assumed he'd win, but I assume O'Leary must have got some strategy going there by the looks of it to get the win, and as you say, it'll definitely help me out. So we'll see. Still alive, obviously, so we're going to keep going to the end, but I think Cam will end up being the overall. He's just overall a bit better than I am, like especially obviously on dirt oval. He's going to kick my ass in that big time, but I'll do the best I can to obviously keep the fight all the way to the end, so it should be fun.
Certainly should. Well, big congratulations to you once again, Thomas. Before we let you go, is there anyone that you'd like to thank from your garage?
Yeah, just the usual SimRacing channel, all the sponsors on the car, and Henry James Racing, the two groups I'm sort of with there. Big thanks to them for all the help they continuously always give. Obviously to Majors for putting on another great show, and to you guys for an awesome broadcast.
Thomas Hins there, the winner of the HPD class, and we have another driver here ready for an interview. It's Thomas O'Leary, the winner of the Porsche Cup class. Welcome, Thomas, and big congratulations on your victory as well. It looked like it came down to tyres between you and Cam Dance at the end, but again, it didn't come very easy for you. That contact with Ilya Sharmov while the sun was still up hobbled you just a little.
That was a really scary moment, to be honest. I mean, I only saw the smoke, and I knew that he was obviously slower in front, but I didn't know where. So that was a bit of a tricky situation.
Yeah, that was.
But in second stints, yeah. But then, as the strategy played out,
You seem to be breaking up a little bit there, Thomas.
Stop, and that got us the victory.
We caught the end of that, Thomas. We'll see if we can get those technical issues resolved. But just going through the tyre situation for Porsche Cup, Cameron Dance obviously worked his tyres incredibly hard in that middle stage of the race. What was your rubber feeling like at the end, and were you considering pitting for tyres yourself?
I thought about it. So I thought about it at the start of the race, and I thought, okay, maybe the last stint we'll have to take tyres. But then as I got through the first stint, the tyre wear wasn't so bad. And I'll roll the dice and try to keep the tyres for the whole race and see how it goes. And obviously, it was the better strategy, I think.
Well, you were in 21st in the standings coming into this one, but with that 46 points for the class win, certainly brings you up a bit, and I think you'll at the very least gain 5 positions or so in the championship standings towards the end. So certainly looks like your season is getting on track here.
Yeah, my position to fight for the championship, but as far as the team game goes, all points is good points. So if we can just keep racking those up, we'll see where we are at the end of the season.
We shall indeed, and we hope to chat to you again after the next round at the Chili Bowl. Thomas, before we let you go, anyone that you'd like to thank from Kinetic?
I'd just like to thank the guys for work. On the entire team this race with a few incidents that didn't go our way, which cost us a few points, but a great job all around, and another win for John.
Indeed, racing for John, indeed. John King, the late founder of the Kinetic Racing team. That is Thomas O'Leary bringing it home in first place in the Porsche Cup class, and it looks like that's going to be the last driver interview we get in for tonight. Ryan, that brings proceedings to an end, but in just a couple weeks' time, we're going to be going out to the Chili Bowl for the next of our wildcard events. Every region gets their own race. It's World Rallycross Norway and the Crandon World Cup for the other divisions, but here in the international region, we got the Chili Bowl on July the 10th.
Honestly, I kind of wish we had the Crandon World Cup. That would have been really cool. I want Crandon, man. But no, Chili Bowl will be really awesome. Ripping the midgets around a really, really tiny dirt track, a legendary dirt track. I won't be there, but I'm sure you'll do a fantastic job, probably with Jay alongside you. So I might tune in, see how that goes, but I imagine Cameron Dance will be pretty hard to beat. So I'll take my pick now and say Dance will win it.
Righto. Well, we'll see if that prediction comes true. If you're interested in following what we do here at SimSpeed TV, you can give this stream a like. You can hit subscribe on our YouTube channel. Like us on Facebook at SimSpeed Esports Network, and we are at SimSpeed Esports on Twitter as well. And we hope you can join us on the 10th of July for the Chili Bowl, the next round of the International Division of the Majors Series. Can Cameron Dance bounce back and take that victory that eluded him in the Porsche Cup class this time? What can Thomas Hinz do on the dirt? He says he's not very strong on it, but can he spring a surprise? It's going to be an interesting battle for the championship, and we can't wait to see how it turns out. We certainly hope you can't wait either. I'm Reese Gardner. Ryan Jones was alongside me in the commentary box for this one, and Jay Kennedy directing, making everything happen behind the scenes here on SimSpeed TV. Bye for now, but not forever. In a major sense, we will see you at the Chili Bowl.
Fantastic. This is GT racing right now.
He's got traction, he's got everything outside of both of them! Maloney!
Oh, he's taking Anderson! Anderson's up top! Oh my god! Big crash! Oh my goodness, half the field's gonna get rolled!
Second very close. These guys are want to make their way through the field very quickly. Oh, there we go! Oh no! That's massive! This is it! This is over! I can't believe this! Oh my god!
God, what?